Welcome to The Show Off, the podcast where we make each other sit down, shut up, and watch episodes of our favorite TV shows and then explain, or be forced to listen to, why it's top-tier television. This show is for anyone who has ever wanted to go on endless tangents about their favorite shows, but their friends and family don't want to hear it. We get it. Ditch those losers and come hang out with us instead. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Campy.
And this is The Show Off.
Previously on the Show Off podcast.
Our next theme for the next round is our favorite shows. What I pick, a drum roll please, Leverage.
Oh, goddamn, I should have known.
Yeah. It's basically like found family of weirdo thieves and con artists. Basically, they steal from rich guys a lot.
It's a great setup.
Yeah.
Found family, Robin Hood, heist.
Yeah, basically. All right. We're live. We're back.
Hello.
It's been a minute for us, not for you.
Yeah. I needed a break because I had a migraine.
Yeah. We are going through the season change, and that's always rough.
Yeah, it's that time of year again in Wisconsin where it's winter one day and summer the next.
Yeah. It's brutal on your head brain sometimes.
Oh, so.
Yeah. But we're back, and we're talking about Leverage. Yay! Which is my favorite show. So this kicks off our round 2 of the show off, which is our favorite shows. So yes, I will be talking today about Leverage, and we are checking out season 1, episode 5, The Bank Shot Job. First of all, I want to just do a bunch of info dump on you about the show itself and why it's my favorite show.
Hit me with it.
And to recap for y'all in case you missed the little preview from our previous episode about Barry. So Leverage is an hour-long drama that aired on TNT from 2008 to 2012 for 5 seasons, 77 episodes. And it starred Timothy Hutton as Nate Ford, Gina Bellman as Sophie Devereaux, Christian Kane as Elliot Spencer, Beth Riesgraf as Parker, and Aldous Hodge as Alec Hardison.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is Parker the only one without a last name?
Parker is the only one with a single name.
Yes. Respect.
She is, what's the word? Mononymously?
Mononym.
Yeah, she has a mononym.
My girl.
Yeah, she's like Madonna.
Can be.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. The show was produced and written by John Rogers, Chris Downey, and Dean Devlin, as well as a number of other staff writers and producers. But those main 3 dudes are the creators, and John Rogers is the head writer of the show. And before we get any further into the show and this episode, there is something difficult I want to bring up first, and a bit of a disclaimer and a trigger warning here for sexual assault. So if you want to peace out here, totally cool. So a few years ago, I think it was 2020, Timothy Hutton, who plays Nate, was accused of sexual assault by a woman who claimed he raped her shortly after he became famous back in the 80s. He denied the allegation and was technically acquitted of any charges. But I wanted to bring it up preemptively and say that obviously we, the podcast, does not condone that. And we are still going to watch and talk about Leverage, and we are going to discuss the character of Nate Ford. But we just wanted to make you aware that we are aware of that situation. And a lot of other amazing, cool, talented people made this show, and I don't think it's fair to completely dismiss a whole project based on the actions or allegations against one person. For what it's worth, when this news originally came out, the original producers and cast were in talks for a revival of the show, which does exist actually. It's called Leverage Redemption. And
I was seeing that.
Yeah. And there have been 2 seasons so far, and a 3rd is in progress now, in production. But yeah, basically when they were in discussion about, getting contracts figured out and stuff for the show, this news came out, and they dropped Timothy Hutton so fast, he was immediately gone. I think actually there might be a lawsuit happening now. It got messy, but they killed off Nate Ford in the reboot.
Oh, so there's no coming back.
No. There's no coming back. And from what I know, his career is basically over.
Props to the writers and producers for having the foresight of, well, he's going to try to worm his way back into this, so let's make it that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And they just zero tolerance. Yeah, obviously. And if you've seen any of the show, like you know that was going to be their response. So yeah, that's what they chose to do. We're still talking about the show, but if that's a total deal breaker for you, we totally get it. No problem. See you later, and we hope you'll join us again in the future for another Show Off Pod. But yeah, please don't cancel us.
Cancel him.
Cancel him. Yeah. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled Leverage info dump. So Leverage was a kind of summer winter split show. Like they aired most of the season in the summer. And then they would have like a winter back half. Yeah. Which actually did they do that for Psych? Or was Psych all in the summer?
I felt like Psych was, no, because Psych had some in the fall too.
In the fall too?
Yeah.
I feel like this was kind of a common thing for the TNT USA shows of the time. They would do like a split season.
Yeah.
Which was kind of nice because you were never really without it for very long.
Right.
Like at most it was like a few months between blocks of episodes.
Times there was always the DVD box set.
Yeah. You could find things to be entertained by. But that also meant it had kind of naturally had 13 to 16 episode seasons. So it really benefited from that, I think. So your episodes could be higher quality and there was no filler. And
no fluff.
No fluff, yeah, and you could have an overarching season plot that was pretty tight. And then, hilariously, that kind of became the standard for Netflix and streaming shows and stuff to have these like half seasons almost.
Right.
And I tell people this would be my favorite show of all time because while it might not be the best show out there, in terms of lots of things, it combines pretty much every single element I love in like a single TV show.
It hits all your
interests. All the marks, you guys, pun intended. It's pretty insane actually. So I wanted to go through some of those for you.
Let's do it. That's what we're here for.
Alrighty. Number 1. If you're my friend, you know that I love con and heist movies, books, TV shows, and this show is why. This is the genesis. Period. End of story.
This is where it starts.
Well, I guess I had seen the Oceans movies before, or at least one of them came out before this, right? Yeah. 2008. So I had seen at least the first one of those, probably at least the first two. So, and I did like them, but I wasn't yet obsessed, this show was like made me obsessed.
All right. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know this.
It's just a really good plot device. I don't know. Con and heist stuff. Like it just makes for a fun time. Number 2, it has a great ensemble cast where everyone, all 5 team members, have an extremely well-defined character arc and growth throughout the 5 seasons. And this was somewhat unique at the time. I think we have more shows now with this type of ensemble cast with more development and so on.
Yeah.
But this was kind of unique at the time because you had a lot of shows that had like 1 or 2 main characters maybe, and then like ancillary characters around them.
Right.
And they weren't necessarily as well developed or interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, they might get like mini arcs.
Yeah, mini arcs.
But never
not like the
dedicated.
The full enchilada. Yeah. So yeah, I think of like House, if we were to kind of Psych, Shauna and Gus are pretty well developed. You kind of got that dynamic duo.
Yeah, no, the show's just about them.
Yeah. But then, you have kind of side characters. But yeah, John Rogers was fond of saying in the Leverage DVD commentary, which, by the way, there is a writer-director commentary for every single episode of the original series. Leverage is a, quote, true 5-hander in terms of having 5 fully developed, dynamic, interesting characters. So yeah, I don't really know where he came up with that term. He just says, yeah, right. I'm like, and I always like what I try to think about it. I'm like, what do you mean by that, my guy? Because I feel like he, like, when you think about that, you want to like hold up your hand with 5 fingers, but that doesn't match the phrase.
Or do you have 5 hands? I'm very confused.
Yeah, but that's what he called it. I don't know. Yeah, and in the commentary, they also talk about how each member of the team is the best at what they do. So a lot of Leverage is what they called competence porn, because it's like super satisfying to watch people be good at the thing that they're good at. I was going to say,
because each of them, sorry, we're jumping into a little bit of the episode already, but each of them has their own role to play. Mm-hmm. They do it both collaboratively, but also independently. And they trust each other to do it all independently.
And it's super fucking satisfying.
It is very satisfying.
Yeah, watching people be good at their thing and then, working together to be even better. And it's super fun. And number 3, similar to what we talked about with Barry last week, actually, this show also established a very distinct style from the jump. The flashbacks that clue you in on the con, the roundy round shots of the crew going through plans. And I don't think we really had one of those shots in this episode, actually.
Not in this one.
But something they do a lot. The writers talk about later that once they kind of established that, they literally call it the roundy round. The roundy rounds, they actually started like writing dialogue to how they like imagine the camera would be moving around the circle. Yeah. So then you would just like have people just hit their lines exactly.
So it's like a That 70s show going around the circle with everybody saying something, but with a lot more intention.
I will trust you on that one. I have not seen much of that 70s show, but something like that.
That in Leverage, they don't get high while doing the roundy round.
They do not. Okay. No. I don't think anyone gets high in Leverage, which is a trick. Nope, that's a lie. That's a lie. It definitely happens at least once. People end up on drugs accidentally. But so that's one of the things they do. They have this iconic overhead shot they do when they kind of go their separate ways. That's a shot they use in the pilot, and then they call back to it a lot. They have what they call the ninja zoom, which is basically a bunch of zoom shots like stitched together into one massive zoom. And I'm not sure it's something they do in this episode. They might have done like a mini version of it at one point, and I can point that out when we get there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a thing that they made up basically for the show. Ninja zoom.
They're coming up with their own film terms.
Truly. It's hilarious. That's why it's so much fun to like listen to the commentaries, because they'll just start talking in their own lingo, and like you have to follow along with them to know what they're talking about. Writing wise, they talk about the kind of key rule for each episode is that the bad guy must always be taken down by their own hubris or their own like bad guy thing. It has to take them down. And there must always be a gloat where the team watches the bad guy get hauled away, and somebody usually has like a pithy one-liner.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So those are kind of like the rules and stylistic rules that the show follows, and they were very intentional about like creating some of those from the beginning, from the pilot, and then building on that from there throughout the whole show.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Which again is like not something you saw a lot in cable network TV.
No, like knowing exactly from the beginning the kind of the show that you want it to be.
Yeah, which I think this show almost lends itself to that in a way, because it was such a unique concept. You know, it wasn't like you were just shooting another cop show or another doctor show. You could kind of play around with a lot of stuff here. So yeah, we'll talk about some of those in this episode. Number 4. Leverage is one of the rare procedural dramas that isn't a cop or doctor show. Not that those are bad. I watch a lot of those and I enjoy them.
Yeah, we stand
But Leverage is a procedural because it basically has a case of the week style plot for each episode. But it also has overarching serial story elements. And each episode of Leverage also follows a pretty strict 3-act story structure, which John Rogers talks about a lot in the commentaries. And he was famous for using a whiteboard and note cards in the writer's room to like build out the structure of every episode. So if you're studying screenwriting, Leverage is a great show to watch because you can kind of try to figure out how they set up the story in each episode and how like one act leads into the next.
Yeah.
And where they break it.
If you want to write a spec script, this would be a really good show to practice on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and like just break it down and analyze it.
Yeah.
Yeah, super fun. Number 5. There are about 1 billion little running gags and jokes throughout this show. Similar to Psych, again. It's like Psych is our constant comparison show.
I mean, everything compares to Psych because nothing compares to Psych.
So yeah, just a bajillion running gags and jokes, and they're so fun to track, and they make you giggle every time they come up. So I'll just list a few off the top of my head, and like seriously, this isn't even like 1/16 of probably the jokes, but off the top of my head, Damn it, Hardison, Elliot's hair flips, Let's go steal a blank, Elliot saying very distinctive, Parker jumping off buildings or other terrifyingly tall places, Parker pushing people off buildings or other terrifyingly tall places.
Noticing a pattern with Parker.
There's somewhat of a pattern, yeah. No stabbing Wednesdays, Age of the Geek, everyone trying to guess Sophie's real name, etc., etc., etc. There's so many. But it's those kind of little details that I think help build a cult following. and make a show extremely rewatchable, because it's just so much fun to like go back and find those little spots.
Like that's the kind of thing that for like a fan of the show, that it's you're in the know. You get
exactly.
The inside jokes. You're a part
you
of
get
the crew.
You get the joke.
But it's also like, obviously the people who made the show were just having a hell of a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to get to that as well. That's also one of my main points, for sure. But yeah, number 6, leverage is the found family trope at its finest. And they set up this dynamic almost immediately from the start of the show, which is kind of insane, but you basically believe it instantly. So Nate and Sophie are the quote unquote parents, and Elliot, Parker, and Hardison are the kids. But Elliot also kind of functions as like an uncle or like Nate's brother sometimes.
He's got an uncle vibe.
Yeah, he's interesting. He's like part of the family, but also kind of separate from the family. It's interesting. But also he's lumped in with the kids a lot. So yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find a better portrayed found family than this one. And if you know one, please tell me. I would love to hear about it. Leave us a comment. Okay, number 7. The show walks a fine line between drama and comedy, and while it's silly, it also makes some really well-written points about addiction, trauma, family, personal identity, interpersonal relationships, loyalty, good versus evil, and lots more themes. And it has some banger dialogue that it didn't necessarily need to have, but it's there, and it slaps.
Yeah.
And
in this episode, there's a lot of good ones.
There's some good ones. Yeah, just in this episode alone. But yeah, you're going to learn as we continue doing this podcast that if a show has good dialogue, I'm basically there. Like, count me in, sign me up. Yeah. And here's my last one. Last 2. Number 8, between the show itself, the DVD commentary, and John Rogers' blog, which you can still find on the interwebs, con appearances, and the fans, there was and still is just really good energy around this show. And like we were kind of just talking about, you can tell that the people who made it were super into it, and people loved it, and they asked questions, and they dove deep into the characters and plot lines, and everyone who worked on the show happily reciprocated and answered questions and stuff. And they talk in the commentary all the time about how amazing their cast and crew is and how lucky they are to get to shoot in whatever location they're in. And you can just tell this is a show made by people who truly love what they do. And it comes through on screen and off. And it's one of the few shows ever that was super transparent about process and creation of the show while it was actually happening. John Rogers would have like a Q&A on his blog after every episode.
Wow.
They did these commentaries. You know, they were at various cons and stuff.
They really embraced the fandom.
Yeah. I think all the writers, you know, were on Twitter and like interacted with fans there and still do. And now they're doing the reboot.
That was like an age where any kind of interaction with the shows you loved wasn't necessarily common.
No, not at all.
No.
And particularly to have the showrunner and head writer of the show have like an ongoing blog about the show and like interact with fans, answer questions,
with the fans,
write full posts about the production of the show itself and like episode by episode. Like that was nuts.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't know about that blog as the show was airing. Sadly, I would have been super into it.
You would have been all over that.
Yeah, but his blog is still online. I forget. It's like Kung Fu Monkey or something like that is his blog. If you just search John Rogers' blog, you'll find it. But yeah, it's still there and you can still check out all his posts about the original show.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Okay, last one, number 9. I probably have more, but we'll stop here. The original Leverage ran for 5 seasons, 77 episodes, and it's a perfect runtime. They ended at the top of their game, they didn't overstay their welcome, and there's a full arc to the show that ends on a very satisfying and hopeful note. Each season also is its own self-contained arc, because the writers and showrunners never knew if they would be renewed after each season. I think that's mostly common, especially back then.
Yeah.
But instead of giving you like a cliffhanger, they always made sure to have a satisfying ending to each season, so that if the show was canceled, you wouldn't feel cheated.
That's nice.
Right? That's like, they care about people. They care about them.
Then.
Yeah. But then for like the actual finale to the show, they did know that they were ending it there and they hit all the right beats. So
nice. And it falls within, I'm working on a theory, y'all, that most shows should be 5 seasons or less.
Ooh.
And so this falls within it's good at 5 seasons. Most shows, not all shows.
Yeah.
There's some exceptions to that.
I would probably agree with that. 5 is just a solid.
It's a magic number.
It is a magic number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it really works. Okay, on to the show, on to the episode.
Right. Here we go.
I am going to get started with some of the episode commentary for this episode. So just wanted to share some of that because I was able to find a transcript of it. Shout out to whoever runs the Leverage Commentary Tumblr. Thank you for your service. I did use that information. So
we salute you.
Yeah, we salute you. So this episode, The Bank Shot Job, was written by Amy Berg, directed by Dean Devlin, and produced by John, Dean, and Chris. And interestingly, this was aired as episode 5, but this was the first episode they shot after the pilot.
Really?
Yeah. So in the commentary, John Rogers says that they did the pilot. Then there was the 2008 writer's strike. No joke. Think back to that one, y'all. And then they got picked up for season 1. And then they shot this episode.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
They were still figuring each other out.
Totally.
And, like, figuring out their chemistry.
And there was a 6-month gap. There was a 6-month gap between when they shot the pilot and when they shot, got picked up and started shooting season 1. Yeah. Which I feel like that's pretty uncommon, right? Like, that's crazy, right?
I mean, back in, I guess, like, there used to be a pause, though, in between pilot and pickup. I don't know if it was ever that long, though.
I feel like that's pretty long.
That is a long time.
Yeah. My guess would be like a couple months, 3 months, maybe.
Yeah, to go right into this with such great chemistry between all the characters already.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah.
Right
you should be. It's crazy. But yeah, he said that this episode is how they, quote, took all the loose screws out of the production cycle. Yeah, this is how they gelled everyone, I guess. And it worked, I think, because it's a great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
I'll also mention here that due to network meddling, season 1 actually aired out of order than what the writers planned for. So this episode aired as episode 5, but should have actually been episode 7, I believe, in the correct watch order. So still, not that far off, like still relatively in the middle of the season. But in the correct watch order, you do get those like extra couple episodes to cement the team dynamic for the events of this particular episode unfold, because some stuff goes down. So for our purposes today, it doesn't really matter. But if you decide to go ahead and start watching Leverage from the beginning, just Google the correct watch order for season 1 and make sure you watch it in that order.
Noted.
Yeah. So honestly, I didn't from my memory of originally watching the show, I don't think it made that much of a difference. But there are certain little things that make more sense if you if you're watching in the order they planned. They also talked about in the commentary that this episode was shot in 6 days, which is insane. They were saying normal time frame would be like 10 days, but they said that they liked that it lent an urgency to the show that they think came through on screen. And I would agree. I would agree.
Especially with this episode, the way it's set up.
And it moves. Yeah. So there's no pause really. Yeah, and this is one of the few episodes of the show that drops you in media res, in like the middle of the action, and trust the audience to figure out what's going on. So this is one of those episodes that's breaking the formula. Normally, you would have the client, I guess, come to the Leverage team and talk to usually Nate about whatever their problem is, whoever screwed them over. And then the Leverage team does a debrief about what con they're going to do. And then they go do the con. It's very step by step. But this one's just we're just here and you got to figure out what the hell's going on. Yeah. And they don't do that a lot, but they will end up doing it again in part 1 of the season 1 finale, which is the first David job. It's very good. And they were originally going to build a bank for this set, build a set of the bank, but they were actually able to find this building being renovated, and then they just apparently digitally replaced the roof of it. So I don't know if there wasn't a roof on the building when they were shooting this. I don't know how they would deal with the light if that were the case, but they said they digitally replaced the roof. So that's interesting. I don't know if they just meant for the outside shots.
Maybe. Yeah, I would assume just for the outside shots.
Maybe.
Because I do have thoughts on the set / lighting.
Yeah, for sure. And they also refer to this episode as their Western episode. Yeah.
It is.
It is. They knew.
Literally my first note is Western.
Yep. Dean Devlin actually talks about, who's the director, talks about how the color tone for this episode is almost like sepia. I'm taking all your shit.
Taking everything that I have written
but actually, they're taking all
that I
stuff.
wanted to talk about.
You can still talk about it. But yeah, he talks about that and kind of sepia tone to get that like late afternoon sun kind of vibe.
Stealing all my shit over here.
Okay, well, here's something you wouldn't know. So he mentions that in this season, they did a very different color grading for almost every episode, depending on what environment they're in. Because, you know, they fly around different places and like they change the location.
Okay, that was going to be my first question. You're just stealing all of my notes. Do they switch location each episode? Answer, yes.
Yeah, so they do, and that's pretty unusual for a show, and to like change the color grading is unusual, because normally you want every episode to look
makes me want to watch more episodes.
Yeah, exactly. So I got a little bit of the transcript here. Dean actually said, we actually tried something very unique on the show. We actually went for a different color timing look for every single episode based on the stories. So when we were doing the Miami show, we pushed the saturation and went very colorful. When we did the stork job, it was supposed to be in Eastern Europe, so we went kind of gray. Not something you see a lot in shows.
They might do like an episode here or there that's a little more
a little different
based on the theme of that episode, but not every single episode.
Yeah, normally you want it to match so that people get used to a style. Yeah.
Right.
But I think then where the show gets you used to a style is like the various shot styles I was talking about earlier.
Right.
So like the roundy round shots, the zooms, the flashbacks, like that stuff is all pretty consistent throughout the entire show. But then that means they can play a lot with some of this other stuff like color.
That's cool.
Yeah, in that kind of conversation, Amy Berg, the writer of this episode, was like, well, that makes sense because we don't do episodes of television. We do mini movies every week. And then they were all like, who signed on for that show? That sounds terrible. Which,
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Probably, difficult. For sure.
I imagine.
From a production and crew standpoint, for sure.
Absolutely.
But
the
really
idea
awesome.
That we're going to have fun with this. We're not going to let it get stale.
Yeah, really.
We're going to experiment.
Yeah. And have fun. That like the core of the show is fun. Okay, a couple more notes. They were saying in the commentary that they apparently refer to Elliot in the writer's room as Cowboy Batman because he's one of the few people who can pull off the menacing whisper thing, but also he wears flannels. Elliot's the hitter. He's the guy who beats up people.
He's got the big hair.
Elliot? He has long hair. He has like your length hair.
Volumized.
It is kind of, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
he is Dodd
he's like
Rock
the gruff
in
one.
my notes.
He's what?
Dodd Rock.
What?
It was supposed to be Dad Rock, but I typoed, so it was just Dodd Rock.
Cool.
Like a rocker, but also a dad. And he looks like he would listen to Dad Rock, like Nickelback.
Okay, all right. Well, they make Elliot a country star in one episode.
I can see it. That totally tracks.
Yeah, and I think actually Christian Kane makes country music.
Oh, really?
He's like one of these dudes that can do everything. I don't understand.
He's a slashy.
Yeah, I don't know. But he's great. Yeah, so he's Cowboy Batman. And Dean mentioned at one point, the director, that in one of the scenes there was an ant on Nate's collar that they digitally removed in post because all he could see was the ant when he was watching the edit. And he said it's the most underrated digital effects they did all season.
You know what, though? I gotta give props where props are due. I can't think of what... I think it was a movie. There was a scene where there was a fly walking around on the guy's face, and then it went in his mouth as he was delivering his lines. And every time I watch it, it's one of the most distracting things because I don't even remember the movie or the lines. I just remember the fly on the face.
And like there's no thematic reason for the fly to be
just a fly.
Yeah.
In the shot.
See, he prevented a disaster there.
He did. Yeah. So I respects to the visual effects artist there.
Yeah. And I would say they are pretty discerning with their visual effects. Like there's explosions and stuff sometimes, but other than that, like a lot of the visual effects stuff they're doing is very practical that way, where it's like we're replacing the roof on the bank building or we're removing an ant.
Yeah.
That's distracting. So I like that stuff. Like I like knowing when visual effects isn't just kind of flashy flash.
Yeah, when it's very practically applied that you don't even notice.
Yeah. That I love that shit.
Yeah, me too.
They talked briefly when the scene came on about Aldous doing the scene with the ransom demands, and they were just like, damn, he's so good at this. Now we have to let him do it all the time. And they do. Basically throughout the rest of the show. So yeah, like this being the second episode that they shot, they were still kind of locking in everybody's skills and talents and like seeing what they had to work with. And Aldous Hodge at the time of shooting this also was like 20 years old. I think he was still a teenager when they started shooting the pilot.
Wow.
So he's the baby, arguably the most talented.
Which one?
Hardison.
Who is that?
The hacker.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's the baby, and that man can talk. And he could just like rattle stuff off, and you're like, yep,
yeah, I believe him.
Yep, exactly.
Sounds true.
Exactly, sounds true. Must be true. So they end up using that particular talent of his quite a lot. And they created some writer's room jargon that they used for the rest of the season in this episode. So they said that saying, quote unquote, the ledger became shorthand for a fake fact that the writer would make up to make a plotline work in the episode, because Amy Berg came up with the ledger here being the reason why the night deposit chute was big enough for a person to crawl through. So there's like a very brief explanation where Parker's like going to go in the bank, and she's like doing the stats at the bank. She's like, built before 1980.
Before this time.
Yeah. No no technology. There's a chute where the I don't know, whoever business people had to like
money
put their
the chute.
Put their take and their ledgers in for the day and for the bank. And she totally made that up, but it made it work, and it sounds believable. Mm-hmm. And then they had another term called the orange box, which is the term for the opposite of that. So that's a real fact that seems fake. And that term comes from a later episode in the season called the Mile High Job, where they have to pull off a con on an airplane. And the true fact there is that the black box on an airplane is actually orange, so that it's more visible, which is true, but it sounds fake. So in the writer's room, they'd be like, is that a ledger or an orange box? Which I think is fun. And finally, they came up with one of the main taglines for the show in writing this episode, which we teased last time. So don't tell me what it is, but did you figure out what the tagline was?
I'm going to guess.
I don't know if I want you to tell me, though, because I want to say it when we get there.
Okay, so I guess.
But do you have an idea?
I do.
Okay, good. I figured you would, even if you watched on your phone. I'm outing you.
Okay. All right, hold on. We got to address this comment. Okay, so I went to go watch it. It's on Amazon Prime, if you don't know.
Yeah.
And I went to go watch it on my computer, which has a nice big monitor screen so I could take notes at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it was logged out. And the thing is, it's my sister's account.
Yep.
And it has 2-factor authentication. So I wasn't going to call my sister up when she was at work.
Curse you, 2-factor authentication.
So yeah, I had to watch it on my phone where I am logged in.
Yeah.
But that means I watched the entire episode on my phone screen.
So tragic. You're going to have to rewatch it.
Amanda's calling me out for it.
I mean, you're going to watch the whole show after this, so you'll have to rewatch it.
I'm going to have to log into Amazon now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we go scene by scene?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's deep dive, y'all. This is the bank shop job. So we open with the leverage title and what?
Western.
Yeah, it's basically like one of those long sort of heat wave shots of this like road in the desert, basically. You see a sign for Juan, California, which we're in California, by the way. It says Juan, but it doesn't say California.
I always just
inferred that because they say later that the FBI are coming from San Diego.
Or San Diego.
And they say it's 45 minutes away.
That's true.
So that means they have to be. Because, for a hot second, I was like, we're in Texas, right? Like, it feels like Texas.
I assume Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, border town in Texas.
But it is actually California.
All right.
Which in season 1, they're based in LA. So not too far for our crew. But yeah, V Western, V hot. We got that sepia tone going. In media res, baby, we cut to the inside of an old building, built in the 20s looking bank. Sophie's there in a black dress and a fake pearl necklace sitting at a desk. And we get the jaunty leverage music cue. And we're about to get into it. And you immediately know that the team is on a con. Something's going down. Mm-hmm. And along with another man we're about to meet, Nate walks in a white jacket and a black cowboy hat because we're doing this like White Knight, Black King thing for him this season, which is something they talk about in the pilot. Yeah, and I have a quick note here. So when Nate is on the con, he's almost always wearing a hat of some kind. And a lot of times they're not good. They're not good hats.
How do you feel about the cowboy hat?
I like it. But yeah, he's usually playing some kind of annoying or really like asshole-ish character. So even if the hat's terrible, like it works for the character. But I think this is a good hat. I like this hat.
I like this hat.
Yeah, it's a good hat.
I like the whole outfit.
Whole outfit's
I like his drawl.
Yep. The drawl's good.
It works.
Second note, I'm back on my color coding costume BS. So Nate and Sophie's costumes are almost reverse images of each other. Nate has the white jacket and the black hat, and Sophie wears a black dress and the white pearl necklace. And to me, that was like Nate at this point still believes himself to be the White Knight, like trying on the black hat because he's leading this crew of thieves, but like he sees himself as like the honest man in charge, basically. Yeah. And so does the team. While Sophie is still kind of a grifter and a thief at heart, but she's kind of turned over a new leaf by joining the team and is now playing the part of the good guy.
This makes a little more sense that she's so open and willing to call herself a thief later. So quickly later in the episode.
No, she knows.
Yeah.
She knows. Yeah. And the black and white, I think, also generally just kind of makes them stand out a little bit more to us watching the episode. Again, we have that like sepia tone going, and everyone else is also sort of in more like earthy tones, I would say.
Yeah.
A lot of people are.
Yeah, that tracks.
The black and white of Nate and Sophie, and then also the Mark, Judge Roy, is also in like a black suit. Yeah. So just kind of makes it stand out to us a little bit more. And chef's kiss. Thank you, costume department. Thank you, Nadine, the costume.
Should also quick point out, Nate is Cowboy Jones in my notes.
Nate is Cowboy Jones. So, why Jones?
Cowboy Jones. I don't know.
Just happened.
It just happened.
Yeah.
I was just typing and I was like, Cowboy Jones.
That's great.
Go with it. Sophie is Sophie.
Sophie, you know what? That is the most correct answer ever. Sophie is Sophie.
Sophie is Sophie, but Nate is Cowboy Jones.
Yeah, fair. I love that. Okay. All right. And then, we meet Judge Roy, which is our Mark. And
he's asshat in my notes.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to get there too. So Nate and him walk in. There's a young woman there who works at the bank. She says, "Afternoon, Judge." Nate tips his hat to her because he's a real gentleman. But the judge says, "Hey, sweetheart," and slaps her ass on his way.
Assault.
Yep, on his way past her. Asshat, and he laughs. And you immediately know.
And then it gets worse.
Oh, it gets worse. Hang on. I'm not there yet.
Sorry.
Immediately, you know this guy is the Mark, and he sucks. And then the judge talks to the bank manager, Frank, but he gets his name wrong and calls him Fred. And he asked the manager for the woman's number. And Frank says, "She's 19, sir." And the judge replies, "That's too bad. Does she have a younger sister?"
Vomit in my mouth.
I wrote, "Yikes, bruh."
Gross.
It's so bad. So then he goes into the safety deposit box room off camera. And Nate is just like looking at this guy with, I would say it's a subtle disgust, but definitely disgust. And he like glances.
It'd be hard not to be disgusted by this man.
And he like glances over at Sophie, who's like sitting at a desk on the opposite side of the room. And they do like a quick zoom, one of those zooms. That isn't a ninja zoom. I would call that a regular zoom. But they do a quick zoom to Sophie, who says, "Go get him, Tiger," which I thought was funny, over comms. I should say they all have comms. Everyone on the team has a little earbud.
Earpiece.
So that they can communicate to each other.
Yeah.
Yep. Nate goes to follow him. And then we see the judge pick up a safety deposit box. And he continues to be a jackass to the manager. And then Nate comes in and the judge says, "Trick to a one-horse town is being the horse." So he's a big fish in a small pond.
Gross.
And he sucks.
Ass hat.
Ass hat. Even though he's not wearing a hat.
Oh, but he still is one.
Yeah, for sure. Nate opens the box and it's full of cash. And the judge says, "That's a little more than we discussed. Hope that isn't a problem." Nate says, "That's fine," in his little southern accent. So this is the first time we hear him speak. He's just been doing facial expressions this entire time before. So he says that's fine, but he'll have to adjust his fee to 20%. The judge says 15 and he won't have him arrested. Nate replies, "You know what they say, laundering is a dirty business." And the judge leaves and Nate starts transferring the money to a briefcase. So that's basically the opening scene. And there's a ton of info in this first scene and basically no pipe. Do you know what pipe is, Campy?
I don't.
So pipe is a term that I learned from this show also, which is apparently writer's shorthand for exposition dump.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called pipe. So they'll talk about
exposition dumping in this episode.
Yeah, in the show commentary in general, they talk a lot about quote unquote like giving the pipe to Aldous Hodge as Hardison because he's good at talking, and like he often does the debriefs in the beginning when you like of a normal episode when you're talking about the client and like the Mark and what con they're going to do and all that kind of stuff. So he does a lot of the exposition dumping, and yeah, they'll say they're giving him the pipe. So,
all right.
But in this scene, there's basically no pipe. It's all just like we drop you in and you're just told to figure it out. You're told everything from what is being shown on camera, nonverbal communication, and dialogue. That isn't, dialogue that isn't directly like, this is what is happening.
Right.
And yeah, you immediately get the judge is the bad guy, the judge is the mark, Nate and Sophie, and presumably the kids elsewhere are conning him. And everyone in this town is under his thumb somehow, the judge, but nobody likes him because he's a dick. So
he's an asshat.
Yeah, because he's an asshat. Yeah. So any other thoughts you have on this opening scene?
Just sepia tone, atmosphere.
Mm-hmm, yeah, atmosphere.
They did a fantastic job.
It feels hot.
It feels
hot as shit. Yes. And they talk about also in the commentary that it was actually like 110 degrees.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. And I think too, just like calling out the set design and what they did.
Yeah.
Like the inside of the bank.
It looks great.
The atmosphere itself obviously is hot, but how do you capture that in just lighting?
Yeah.
And the way that they do that is it's actually pretty dimly lit inside the bank because all the bright shutters are closed. And so there's cracks in the shutters. So you have the bright white light from outside. It's a glare, but it keeps the rest of the bank feeling like it's trying to be cool because it's darker. And
I like that.
It's this perfect atmosphere that it creates where you're like, it's hot as hell.
Yeah, but not so dark that you can't like see things.
Right. And because you still got the sepia tone over
Yeah. It helps. Yeah, I like that too. I think the inside of the bank looks great. I love the old timiness of it.
Yeah.
I think even like Sophie's dress and like some people's outfits kind of lend to that too. Like it feels a little bit out of time.
Yeah, they lean into the Western style without being over the top.
Exactly.
We're going to be full Western and
for sure.
Just borrowing the elements.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Alrighty, so next scene, which I'm calling "Where the Kids At." So now we get Hardison and Parker are in the van outside the bank across the street. And now we get the pipe and we give it to Aldous Hodge. So through dialogue. So Hardison's complaining about the con and how long it's taken them. And it's a rip deal. And he's like, no more rip deal. He says no more rip deals because they take too long. And Parker explains that they're called a rip deal because you have to convince the mark that they're getting a deal before you rip them off. And Hardison complains that they spent 2 weeks sleeping in crappy hotels and having his soul sucked dry. And it's 107 degrees. Who lives where it's 107 degrees?
This city is a monument to man's hubris.
So he's not happy about it. And he's like sweating. Parker says it's not so bad. She kind of likes it. But Hardison keeps bitching about how he had to retask 2 satellites to get an internet connection, and it took hours to download the last episode of Doctor Who.
I loved this for 2 reasons. 1, Doctor Who.
Relevant.
2, torrenting.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Can't be not to out you on
we love a fellow pirate.
Yeah.
I was born and raised a pirate, y'all. I'm not changing my ways.
So yeah, this is one of many like nerdy references that this show makes, and particularly for Hardison is the ultimate nerd basically. And yeah, this is the first of many Doctor Who and Star Trek references.
Computer geek
no,
hacker if he didn't like Doctor Who.
He would have no cred.
Yeah,
he would have no cred. So we get our first one of that. And I was trying to figure out when this came out. It was still David Tennant, right? This is 2008. He's talking about new Doctor Who.
Yeah, that would be DT.
It would be like the end.
Right.
The end of DT.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
We love it. We love
it. We love
a David Tennant connection.
Okay. Parker says illegal downloading's wrong before she lights a bunch of paper on fire in a trash can and just watches it burn. Remember, it's 107 degrees.
I really like Parker. I'm digging her vibe.
Yes. Yeah. What's the song? Is like she's cute but a psycho? She's cute but a psycho. That song? That's Parker. Especially at this early in the show. So yeah, Hardison just watches her, like baffled, and calms Elliot on how the breakdown is going. And we cut to Elliot and he's walking down the street with some kind of like Native American statue in this, and like he comes up to this beat up pickup truck which has got like a ton of other stuff in it. He like throws the statue in the back of the truck and he says 5 more minutes and we were never here.
Yeah.
So they had some kind of base set up where maybe they initially met with the judge and they were
part of their like front.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So and again, like this is something you would have seen in another episode of Leverage, right, where you had start the con from the beginning, but we're coming in the middle, so you're just kind of hearing about.
Okay, this makes more sense with you kind of explaining it this way. Because I was like, what is Dodd Rock doing? Like, okay, we got a truck, we got a Native American statue. Yeah. He says we're never gonna exist.
And for the record, I think the Native American statue is supposed to be funny. Like it's like the commentary on whatever weird character Nate is playing. You know, like why have the Native American statue? It's weird.
Yeah.
So he says, almost done, basically 5 more minutes. And Hardison says, you want me to call the Delgado family and tell them the news? Elliot says no, he wants to do it himself. He just wishes they could do more than bankrupt that corrupt son of a bitch.
Who is Asshat, yes.
Is Asshat, yes, that's Asshat. And, you know, maybe that's going to pay off later. So now we know that the Delgados must be the original client, and we've established that the kids are on the outside while Nate and Sophie are on the inside, actually doing the con. Anything else you want to say about this part? Just, you like Parker's vibe?
Parker, great vibe.
Parker is a great
Lover,
vibe. Yeah.
Same.
She does not give, she gives 0 fucks.
I do disagree with her about downloading's illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, your point, Parker?
Honestly, I don't think she agrees with that statement either. She was just trying to, I don't know, rile up Hardison. Yeah, she's
I like her vibe.
That's exactly correct. She's being a menace. She is a menace in the best way. I love her. Okay, next scene, which I'm calling It's a Robbery. So back in the bank, Nate walks out of the vault with the money in the briefcase. He smiles at Sophie and tips his hat, and she tries not to smile back. It's pretty cute. And he makes for the door, and like, leverage theme is in full swing. They've done the con. They've got the money. They're going to screw over this dude, but wait a second. We go slow-mo. And the music changes. Nate has seen something. Mm-hmm. His like cocky smirk drops from his face, and his like analyzing face comes on.
Go down.
Yeah, it's still slow mo, and we like slow pan around the room to see whatever it is that he's seen. So the whole time we're just watching him.
Yeah.
And him just like realizing something.
Yeah. And the way that it's shot too with the slow mo.
Yeah.
Like in my notes, I wrote, "Oh shit, is there a bank robbery?"
Yeah, yeah, you feel the tension.
It's building the tension.
It's
to it.
really good.
You know something's wrong, and it's all just done with the way that it's shot.
Yeah, the way that it's shot and facial expression. Basically, that's it. So we pan around the room to see what he's seen, which is a very nervous-looking kid standing near the bank teller counter, like facing towards us, so not facing the counter. And then there's just like a lot of nonverbal communication that happens here. So Nate looks at Sophie briefly. She looks back at him like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on, bro? The judge asks what's wrong. And Nate just says, still in his accent, we have to get out of here. And the judge says, I thought that's what we were doing. But Nate wasn't really talking to him. He was telling Sophie over comms to get out because his spidey senses are tingling. So we quick cut to Hardison outside in the van. He asks what Nate is waiting for back in the bank. Sophie gets up and starts to leave without a word. But now we see a man with his back to us at the counter and a shotgun sort of half hidden at his side. And the nervous boy is still standing next to him facing out at the bank, but then he moves away. Nate's still just like watching. We're doing a lot of quick cuts of like his expression back to Sophie, back to the 2 dudes. And an absolutely ancient looking security guard seems to notice something going on and gets up to walk over to the man at the counter, intercepting Sophie. She stops. She and Nate exchange nervous glances, but Nate has still not moved, and he's watching to see what happens. The old security guard asks the man to step away from the counter. The man asks what for. The guard draws his gun and says, hands up. The man says, easy, but the boy comes up behind the security guard with a pistol and says, drop the gun. The other man cocks his own gun and says, this is a robbery. He doesn't want to hurt anybody, but we will do it if you don't do exactly what we say. Everybody move away from the door. And at this point, Sophie and Nate exchange hilarious, like, are you serious looks?
It is the look of, aw, shit. Here we go again.
Yeah, right. They just do so much nonverbal communication in this whole episode, and it's amazing. That's my shit. I love it. So now we cut back to the kids.
Oh, wait. Before we do cut back to the kids, I wrote down a comment.
Yeah.
Do Cowboy Jones and Sophie have a thing?
Bruh. Yeah.
Because nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're a team. They're working together, but there's vibes there.
Yeah. Well, at this point, they have a non-thing. They have a thing they're trying to pretend is not a thing.
Aha.
They have mega history. Do you want the history? Do you remember anything from the pilot?
Not much.
Okay, yeah. So I'll give you the basic gist. So Sophie is a grifter and basically was an art thief all over Europe in like the 90s, roughly. 90s, early aughts. And Nate was an insurance investigator. So if the pieces or whatever were insured by his insurance company and they were stolen or went missing, he'd have to go investigate to try to get them back and save the insurance company money. So basically, they did like a little cat and mouse thing all over Europe.
Cute.
For a long time. And they never really say how long, but like years probably. Like you get the vibe of like they've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, I like it.
And yeah, there's vibes there for sure. We are absolutely playing into that.
Batman and the Joker.
What?
Batman and the Joker. There's underlying vibes there too.
That's not the comparison I would go with, but sure. Okay, so we cut to the kids. Or at least Parker and Hardison in the van. Parker says, "You gotta be kidding me." Hardison says, "Aw, hell no." And Elliot says, "I knew this went too smooth." And Elliot's still driving the truck from where he picked up all the stuff. So he's not with them yet. Back in the bank robbers start rounding people up and get a bank teller to empty all the tills. They lock the door. Nate hisses under his breath, "Get out now." Hardison asks if he's talking to them. And Parker goes, "You mean the unmarked van parked across the street from the bank being robbed?" Yeah, he's talking to us. She's so sassy. She's not always this sassy, but she was in this episode. It was great. Hardison says, "What the hell was Nate thinking? 5 more feet and he would have been in the clear." And Parker, the most socially inept of the crew at this point, and possibly at all points, says, "Don't be an idiot, Hardison." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Sophie was still in there." And then the van peels out. So there's your answer.
Obviously.
So like I said, I love how much nonverbal communication there is in the scene. Ton of shot, reverse shot between Nate and Sophie as like they figure out what's going on. Going from like confusion to like fear and then to like, well, this is what's happening, I guess.
This is the situation.
Like seriously, that exchange look they have when the guy pulls out the gun and they're just like, what the fuck, man? It's so good. I think it's a great use of the comms also to communicate with the team. And they're going to do a lot of this to communicate with the team without talking to them directly.
Yeah, this is so well done.
Because they're still in the con with the judge too. Like the bank robbery is happening, but they're not dropping the act. So you can literally see the wheels turning in Nate's brain as he analyzes what's going on. And he gets scared a second for Sophie, but then he kind of like locks it down. Now they're in this situation. So, and this is like the 5-minute mark of the episode.
Yeah, there's and this so much stuff that happens.
This much stuff has already happened. It's insane. Anything else you want to add?
Nope. Keep going.
Alrighty, keep going. All right. This scene I'm calling, is it Elliot time? No, not yet. Okay. So in the bank, the older bank robber says it's not nearly enough cash. What are they going to do to the younger kid? And we're sort of overhearing this conversation. He asks the bank teller to open the safe. She says she can't do it. It's on a timer. It can only be opened certain times of the day. And they argue. The judge, meanwhile, crawls next to Nate and slides the briefcase full of money under a nearby table. Nate just looks at him. Bank robber 1, the older one, asks everyone to empty their pockets. Sophie is so over it. She's like almost rolling her eyes. It's so good. Again, reverse shot with Sophie and Nate. Like Nate just makes like a vague deal with it gesture.
Yep.
It's so funny. And we cut. Cop cars roll past in Parker and Hardison driving the van. Wait, what do you got?
There is one line that I wrote down.
Okay,
Asshat wants to try and reason with the bank robbers.
Yes.
And I said, "Oh, let him."
Yeah. Well,
go let him. Go let him. Let him get shot.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but we will get there. Cop cars roll past Parker and Hardison driving the van. Parker says, "That's not a bad response time. Someone must have tripped the silent alarm." Hardison, freaking out more, just says, "This is so not good." And we haven't heard from Elliot yet. So back to Nate and the judge on the floor of the bank. The judge says these guys don't know what they're doing as they see the bank robbers kind of arguing quietly amongst themselves. And maybe he should talk to them and get them to see reason.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, it's okay. You're right there. Nate says, "That's a good idea. Get us both shot." Nate says, the judge says, "I got killers standing in front of me every day in court. These guys ain't them." Nate says, yeah, maybe you're right. So like he's starting to think about what these guys are actually doing also. Outside the bank, the cops are outside. Elliot shows up at the scene where the cops are trying to establish a perimeter. And zeroed in on the building, Elliot just kind of brushes past one of the cops and says, "Tell me what's going on in there." And the cop says, "I can't tell you that, sir." But of course, Elliot isn't talking to him. So Elliot just turns to him and is like, "I'm not talking to you." And he turns back to the building. How many?
Having a conversation with you.
Like, dude. And the cop's just like, what? So he turns back into the building and says, how many are there? I'm not doing Christian Kane's performance here justice. I love it when he like goes into like serious Elliot mode. It's very good. This is like his Batman mode. So, so Nate, pretending to talk to the judge, says, oh, like clearly amateurs, these two, like the younger one looks like he's never handled a gun before. Elliot goes, is Judge Blowhard next to you? And Nate goes, yep, amateurs. That's what makes them so dangerous. Elliot says, okay, two guys, neither one a criminal mastermind. You want me in there? And Nate replies, still talking to the judge, well, it's a volatile situation. Probably good to sit tight and see what these guys do. Elliot says, all right, your call, boss. And he turns away and finally leaves the crime scene. And the cop is like, thank you.
I love anyone who's going to tell a cop to basically fuck off.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
busy.
Like, dude, I got shit to do. Like, also, I couldn't destroy you in 5 seconds.
I mean, he is.
Yeah, Cowboy Batman. Yeah, I love this scene. Great example here of, I think, the tightrope leverage walks between drama and comedy. It's like literally like beat for beat. Like, it's crazy. This tense conversation of like, should Elliot go in the bank and fuck shit up and like take these guys out? But then like the dorky little comedy moment of this cop trying to get Elliot freaking Spencer to back off the crime scene and get behind his little crime scene tape, only for Elliot to be following Nate's orders, not the cop's orders, when he finally turns away. It's just really good. Like, it's such a good balancing act they do. And they do this all the time. It's nuts.
And just, great writing. Great writing to be able to have a dialogue between two characters who are talking to other characters.
Yeah. At the same time.
Wild.
At the same time, yeah. And this is a really nice character moment for Elliot, too, I think. And like we talked about earlier, this is kind of mid-season. And I think it really shows that first of all, Elliot has a military background. So he was an Army Ranger.
Oh.
And I feel like this kind of shows that he's fully accepted Nate as his like commanding officer.
Yeah.
Because he says like, your call, boss, and then leaves and follows orders.
Yeah.
So, yep, he could go in there if he wanted to. And if he thought it was the best move, he might have. But there is a lot of times where Nate makes a call that he doesn't necessarily fully agree with, but he does it anyway because Nate's in charge. So, yeah, great use of the comms while staying in character for the con. Next scene, we need to be the police. So the older bank robber says to the younger, I know it's almost 5 o'clock. They're on a time limit for some reason. The judge gets up and starts talking to these guys.
He's about to try and be the hero.
He says he can make this whole thing go away. All the robbers have to do is leave. Nate sort of half gets up, but he doesn't interfere. The robber is like, is that so? Judge says, he's the law in this town. That guy out there with the badge? That's Bill. He works for me. One phone call to him and his guys will drive away. No questions asked.
Such a there's only enough room in this town.
Yeah, there's only room
for
one of us. Yeah. And like also corruption.
Yes.
And they're negotiating. Like while they're negotiating, Nate whispers to Sophie, how are you doing? Sophie says she's just peachy. How about you? Nate said there's something weird going on in here. And Sophie replies, you noticed that too, huh? Nate says, did you hear what the guy said? They didn't have enough. They need more cash and it's not to pay rent. Sophie says she doesn't care. Let's just focus on getting out of here. But Nate says if they help these guys get what they want, they can get everyone out of here safely. So, that's Nate's white knight thing. But then this is a really great line, I thought. I don't know about you, but I am not going to leave my fate in the hands of the Juan volunteer SWAT team. Sophie's like, all right, so what's the plan? And we go back to the judge. He's saying whatever story he makes up about what happened here, these little people will tell the cops. That's how it works in this town, son. Everyone he is a dick.
Whatever he says the truth is. I'll insert this here. You're not going to get this, Amanda. I'm sorry. If you are a fan of the video game Red Dead Redemption 2 or 1, for that matter, the asshat judge gives off strong Dutch vibes in this scene. Dutch in Red Dead is just someone who can basically smooth talk his way out of any situation. And that's how the judge kind of vibes. Well, also both of them are very corrupt, so it works. Yeah. It's a great analogy.
I like it.
So
cool.
if you like Red Dead, watch this episode.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. He says, all you got to do is walk out that front door. And Robber 1 says, thanks, but I know that things that sound easy hardly ever are. Now sit your ass back down. and they're robbing the bank, but now you're kind of like low-key rooting for them because we just want to take down the judge at the end of the day.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate goal. But yeah, Nate whispers to Sophie, we cannot let the local Leos handle the situation. We have to get in charge. We have to be the police. Cut to commercial break.
Oh man, I will say this. These cuts to commercial break threw me out of the episode so quick. Yeah. This is just like we say the snappy line. Fade to black.
Yeah, it happens, you know.
It's so bad.
It's a cable TV show. What are you going to do?
It's the days of cable.
But yeah, basically this is just like a lot of setup in the scene, but I do love like Sophie and Nate just like stage whispering to each other throughout this whole bank robbery. All right, next scene. Agents Parker and Hardison. So we go back to the kids. Parker and Hardison pull up to Elliot in a black sedan. Where did they get this car? We don't know.
Nope. No clue.
They jacked it. Parker gets out of the front seat wearing an FBI windbreaker and aviators. Elliot tosses her a binder and says, nice ride. Parker basically ignores him and says, it's embarrassing. Everybody knows you don't rob a bank without an exit strategy. These two deserve to get caught. She tosses Hardison, who's wearing a matching FBI jacket, tosses him a lanyard, and pulls out one for herself.
How casually they're like, we're FBI agents now.
Yep. And then she like shoves the binder back at Elliot.
Very
just
much like supernatural vibes here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think they talked about this in the commentary. The idea is like they have IDs and like costumes and stuff for like any contingency. Any kind of agency. Yeah, like they just have stuff with them at all times.
Like in Supernatural.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, she shoves the binder back at Elliot, who seems unfazed by her. And Hardison Parker walk over to where the cops are, and Parker's like listing out how she would rob the bank. So she says 42 seconds, 1 security guard who never fired his gun before, 2 closed circuit cameras, 1 outside, 1 inside, and a Glen Reader safe built in the 50s whose default combination is the birthday to the manager's wife. Get in, get out, 42 seconds. She like rattles this off like it's nothing. It's so good. Hardison just says, seriously? Which is kind of the cast and crew joke on John Rogers, because apparently that was like his catchphrase. He'd be like, all the time, he'd be like, seriously? So that was a little ongoing joke. One of the many ongoing jokes, y'all. They duck under the crime scene tape outside the bank, and Hardison introduces them as Agent Leonard and Agent Elmore. This is a reference to something.
I was wondering that. Yeah.
I think it might be a country singer, Leonard Elmore. If y'all know, let us know. But I know it's a reference to something. And like their fake names are almost always references in this show. Yeah. So he says, we'll be taking over this crime scene, sheriff. And then the sheriff introduces himself, Bill Hastings. The sheriff replies, you guys sure are quick. We only called 20 minutes ago. Hardison says they were coming back from a border skirmish. A patrol unit came under attack from a pack of chupacabras. The sheriff says, I thought those were urban legends. Hardison just shakes his head and says, you're adorable. Yeah, so this is the start of many FBI shenanigans in this show. They assume these identities many other times, and it's always good for a laugh.
Yeah, and shout out to a cryptid reference. I love a cryptid reference personally.
Oh, the chupacabras?
Yes.
Yeah. So then Parker takes over and asks the sheriff what he got. He says, well, we can't really see inside, so we don't know how many shooters or how many hostages or what they want. Parker just kind of looks at him and is like, well, what about your tactical insertion team? He says, we don't have a SWAT team per se, but old Virgil up there is a hell of a shot. And he panned to some dude up in the opposite building with a rifle who like smiles and waves at them. And Parker and Hardison just exchange, are you kidding me?
He lives in the middle of a country and just gets way too drunk and shoots his shotgun off all the time.
I think he's wearing like hunting gear.
Yeah.
He's wearing like an orange vest and hunting, which must have been fucking hot for that dude.
Shit, I didn't
right?
think about that.
Anytime you see anybody in a suit in this episode, just terrible. But yeah, Parker Hardison just exchange like, are you kidding me looks. And inside the bank, Nate just sighs. So good. Yeah. So start of FBI shenanigans. And there's also a running joke that these two hapless FBI agents, Taggart and McSweeten, who are the guys that show up at the end. There's a running joke that those two guys are rapidly rising through the ranks of the FBI by taking credit for the Leverage Crew's jobs, like anytime there's FBI involvement. Yeah. So, and this is like a funny way also to show like Parker, you know, walking up to the scene, explaining how she would rob the bank. I think it's just a funny way to show Parker's expertise and that she's always thinking about stealing stuff. Like she's constantly thinking about how she would steal any given thing in a building.
Yeah, I like this girl.
She's super fun. Back in the bank, we're working on the plan. Nate and the judge. The judge says to make sure their under the table money stays under the table. They don't want the feds getting it. Nate just like nods in agreement. The robbers are saying that they have to get into the vault. They're still short on cash. They ask, where's the manager? Sophie slowly raises her hand and says in a perfect American accent, sir, I'm the branch manager.
She volunteers as tribute.
They cut to the real manager real quick, and he's like, if she wants to hang herself, let her. That would be Fred, I believe, from earlier. Sophie explains to the bank robber guy that she might be able to override the vault's timer, which is a big fat lie, of course. The bank robber motions her with his gun towards the vault. She crosses the room with one more glance at Nate, who is watching very closely. I like that theoretically Nate and Sophie could have hatched this plan at some point off screen, but I like to think they both just kind of knew what to do and went for it. So Sophie's going to get one guy to turn and Nate's going to go talk to the kid. And this is definitely like a running theme, especially in the earlier seasons, that Nate and Sophie are always kind of on the same page as far as like the con and like what the plan is and like what they're going to run while the kids are still learning. Yeah.
And like those two they trust each other.
They click.
Yeah. They know what the other is up to generally.
Yeah. Like almost mind reading abilities. Yeah. It's crazy. And it's very addicting to watch. Nate mutters, what are these guys up to? The judge says, got me. I've never seen bank robbers try to add to their haul after the place was surrounded. Usually they want to get the hell out of Dodge. Nate says to the judge, but actually to Hardison over comms, what would help? At this point, he's like, what would help? Are you listening? What would help is if we have some kind of background on these people. Hardison outside says he's already on it. He's hacked into the bank's security system, running facial recognition on the robbers as we speak. It is the blurriest photo you have ever seen in your life. Shout out to 2008.
Oh my goodness.
the photo he pulls up on his computer.
Potato quality.
It is so garbage, but he says if they have records, if these guys have criminal records, we should get something pretty quick, whatever check he's running, and we get a hit almost immediately, of course. The older guy is named Derek. He was U.S. military. He served in the Navy for 20 years and retired last spring. And Nate says that doesn't make sense. Hardison looks into his finances, and the guy emptied his accounts this morning. That's weird. Nate stage whispers that they should figure out who these guys are and get to their family members. Cut to Elliot, who says, I'm 2 steps ahead of you. I'm on my way there now. And he zooms away. So again, competence porn. The team is on it. The kids are on it, even without Nate having to tell them really to do anything.
Yep.
He does tell them what to do, but they basically already know what to do. Okay. Meanwhile, power cuts out in the bank. And all the fans stop. Oh. And you feel it. You're like, oh no. And it's like 110 degrees, actually, in real life in this episode. Nate mutters, what's going on? We cut to Hardison and Parker asking the sheriff. The sheriff says cutting the power is standard operating procedure. Here we go.
Sorry, this is a perfect moment of comedy.
Yeah, buddy. It's so good. Hardison tells... He says, cutting the power is standard operating procedure. Hardison says, where are you getting that bull hockey from, son?
I took a seminar. It was an online seminar.
Oh, yeah. He says, Deputy Arnold took a seminar in crisis management last year. This deputy behind the sheriff is so like...
He's got like a little boyish face.
Yeah, he's like so kind of sad looking and like...
young, naive.
Small.
Yeah.
He goes... It's an online seminar. We got certificates. And Hardison says, and I love this line so much.
The way that he says certificates is so simple.
Yeah.
Certificates.
And Hardison's reply is the best. He says, he's like has like a look of disbelief on his face, and he's like, magic kits come with certificates. Does that make it cool for kids to saw their parents in half? It's so random, and it just works so well. It's hilarious. The sheriff says they're just going by the book, and then Hardison says, the book got a good man killed, and he like pretends.
I absolutely lost it here because he runs off and starts fake dramatic crying.
Yeah, he pretends to be upset and like walks off, and Parker kind of approaches the sheriff and is like, ex-partner, probably shouldn't mention the book again.
I love
or propellers.
Any scene, and this happens a lot in Psych, which is why I think I like Psych so much, but any scene where a character becomes super melodramatic about a fictional event that they are making up on the spot. I don't know why, but it kills me every time.
Yeah, and like, this is a con show, so they do that shit all the time. Sophie is the queen of that. But yeah, like, so again, this amazing comedy beat in the middle of this episode. But this is also kind of an important character thing for Hardison. His thing he has to learn in the earlier seasons is that he takes the con too far. And that's going to get him in trouble later. In like the rankings of like who's the best at the grift, Sophie, obviously number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2 is actually Elliot.
Huh.
Yeah. Which exactly is the reaction you should be having. And he's actually pretty good. Then Nate, then probably a tie in the earlier seasons between Parker and Hardison. Technically, Hardison would be better because Parker's just so socially inept.
She's a little chaos gremlin.
Yeah, she enjoys stabbing people. Like, it's a lot. But that flips.
I'm sorry, what?
No stabbing Wednesdays. She stabs a guy with a fork at one point.
Okay.
Yes.
Just casually mention that she likes stabbing people.
Yeah. No, I should say no. Well, they do imply it a lot. You don't actually see her stabbing a lot of people. She ends up tasing a lot of people later. Eventually, she just walks around with the taser. But like in this first season, there's an episode where she stabs a guy with a fork. And it's like
sometimes you gotta.
Yeah, and it's basically because she's like feeling awkward in the situation. But yeah, Hardison takes the con too far. So him and Parker have a lot to learn about the grift and the con at this point. But for this time, people are going with it. So they're kind of lucky here. All right, now we're going to get the divide and conquer Nate and Sophie plan. So back at the bank, Sophie is still at the vault pressing random buttons. And she asks Derek why he's robbing the bank. And he says they don't have a choice. They need the money. She asks, why is your son in some kind of trouble? He kind of looks at her and she's like, it is your son, right? And he says it's none of her business. She says since he has a gun pointed at her, she kind of feels like it is her business.
She's so goddamn bold.
Yeah.
Like she has
does not care.
Pointed at her and she's like, no, this is now my business and I'm going to make sure you know. Like,
and she's still on the con. She's still on the con.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, she's so bold. She's so fierce.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's my favorite.
It's great.
Okay. And he's like, you don't even know the combination, do you? Are you even the branch manager? And she's like, no, not exactly. And she like starts slowly dropping the accent. It's kind of crazy actually how she drops. Like it's not immediate. It's kind of like slowly as she's saying stuff. So I don't know how Gina Bellman does that, but props. I was shocked. It was cool. And she says, okay, Derek, listen up. I just want to help you and your son. He asked how she know his name. She says, I know a lot of things. I know you don't want to hurt anyone. And I know you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't have to. So just try to help me understand what's the money for. And then we go to the other side of the room and the kid is looking out the window. And he still has his own handgun and he gets a phone call on a flip phone and answers. And he says, I'm working on it. It'll be there, all of it. Just please don't hurt her. And Nate's watching this and clocks the call. Back to Elliot.
Real quick insertion here.
Yeah.
Have you seen or do you know of Mad Genius?
Mad Genius.
Because that's where I thought this was going.
Oh, okay.
Mad Genius is based off of, I actually haven't seen it. It's a Netflix show, which I have not seen. But it's based off a real life event where they put a bomb as a collar around a guy's neck and forced him to rob a bank.
What?
And that's where I thought this was going.
Oh, no, we're not that dark.
That they're strapped with bombs, but that they were being forced to
rob the bank. Sure.
Yeah. Which, in a way, yes, but no, they aren't being forced to rob a bank.
Specifically.
Yeah. They just need the money.
They're being forced to get money.
So I thought it was going that direction.
That's interesting.
Like, that's much darker.
Yeah, that's a lot darker. Yeah. That's not really the tone of this show. No. I would say 99% of the time. Okay, so then we cut back to Elliot, and Elliot's now at the family's house, and it's been broken into. He's telling Nate this, and someone was here when it happened. He finds a report card with the kid's name. It's Michael. So Nate gets up and goes over to Michael in the bank. Michael says, what are you doing? Get back on the ground, points his gun. But Nate says, it's not too late, Michael. You can still save her. Do you know who took her? And he's doing like the calm, talking to a wild animal type of voice. And he's totally dropped the accent at this point.
Would you not be freaked out? Okay, you're robbing a bank because you have to.
Right.
Would you not be absolutely freaked out of your mind if someone approached you and was like, Amanda, I know your name.
Yeah.
I know they took your mom. He knows everything about him.
He does immediately follow it up with like, we can help you, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, like, so if it was me, right? At this point, like, I'm so freaked out about my entire life and everything that's already going on. Like, what's one more dude who knows my name? You know, like it's just we're just adding.
I'd just be freaked out. I'd be like, no, you're a part of this too. You know too much.
Yeah. I mean, Nate Ford probably doesn't look like he's involved with.
No, he's the White Knight.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, you guys let us know. Okay, yeah. So he says it's not too late. You can still save her. Do you know who took her? Michael just kind of immediately starts spilling his guts. He says it's all his fault. They think I did it. They left a note saying they want $100,000 by 5 o'clock or they'll kill her. And Nate says, we're not going to let that happen, but you have to trust me and you have to do exactly what I say. And I promise we will get your mom back. Turns out Michael was running drugs for the local cartel in Juan. And he got caught up in this whole thing, and then a whole shipment was lost, and they think he took it, but he didn't. But they still want their money. So they took his mom as collateral until he could come up with $100,000. Like, he's kind of telling Nate all this, and there's some muttering in the background from the hostages, and Michael tells him to shut the hell up. But Nate grabs his arm with the gun. I was kind of shook by this, and says, listen, I know what you're going through.
He doesn't just grab his arm with the gun. He grabs his arm so the gun is pointing back at himself.
Yeah. And also, when Michael's explaining, at least part of the time when Michael's explaining this, he's still pointing the gun at Nate.
Yeah.
And Nate's just like chill with it.
Yeah.
Like, Nate does kind of have a death wish because of his backstory, but he's also just very chill about it.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, it read as someone who is so confident in his abilities.
Yeah, and he is.
And so confident in his read of the situation.
Right.
That, yeah, him literally taking control of the kid's gun arm.
Right.
To point it at himself as the target.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Like, earlier, like, he was talking about, like, this kid, like, clearly has not shot a gun before, like, doesn't really know what he's doing. So, yeah, and he can tell he's freaking out. Yeah. So he kind of just takes control. So Nate grabs his arm with the gun and says, listen, I know what you're going through. I can help if you'll let me. Michael's like, how? You're trapped in here, same as us. Nate says, I got people on the outside. And then we cut to Sophie, and like clearly she's just told Derek the same thing. So we're doing like a nice back and forth thing here of them doing the same speech with each of the...
Which again, them being on the exact same page.
Wavelength. He says, no cops, they'll kill her if they find out, meaning his wife. Sophie says, they're not cops, I promise you. They're friends of mine and you can trust them. And Derek says, why should I? I don't know you. To which Sophie replies, I'm a thief.
This is what I mean. Like, she's so quick to be like, no, this is the truth. I'm a thief.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, I'm not sure what to do with that. Which is another great line. Yeah, and Sophie explains their con on Judge Roy, who has been taking bribes from dealers, and cut a man loose who killed a local girl, Beth Delgado. And Derek says he remembers her. She went to school with his son. Sophie straight up says we're running a scan on him, taking all his dirty money and giving it to the family. So now we know what the original
we get a
con
little
is.
bit of exposition dump, but it's done naturally.
Yeah, naturally, and like very essential to the plot now. Derek says he can't just trust her, they're thieves. And Sophie replies, and we're your only chance. With the cops outside, my people are the only ones who can make the drop. Derek can't believe it. Your friends just happen to have $100,000 lying around. And Sophie smiles because, yeah, they literally do. It's in a briefcase. We cut back to Nate, who says, we're going to use the money we have in here, talking to the team. Michael says, it's not enough. They're short $30,000. Nate says, no, it's okay. We have an alternate revenue source. And that's a callback to the pilot.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they put enough emphasis, not just once, but a few times on alternate revenue source.
Yeah. He says it very specifically. That's, I think in the pilot, the phrase is alternate revenue stream, but same thing. So outside, Hardison asks, is he suggesting what I think he's suggesting? And Parker's like, are you suggesting what we think you're suggesting? You want to give our bad guys money to some other bad guys? And Nate says, that's exactly what I'm suggesting we do, but we're going to do it without blowing our covers. And Michael's like, who are you talking to, dude? And Elliot, still in the house, says, maybe I'm dense, Nate, but your alternate revenue source is sitting 2 feet from Boss Hogg himself, surrounded by cops. And Nate's like, I didn't say it was going to be easy, but nothing's impossible, especially when you have the world's greatest thief on your payroll. And Parker, have you ever robbed a bank that's being robbed?
This was a really good way for me to introduce Parker as a bank robber.
Yes.
Because I'm like, okay, she's competent. She knows things. She obviously could figure out how to rob a bank.
Yeah.
But to be like the greatest robber on my bankroll.
Yeah.
And then, have you robbed a bank that's been robbed?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great way to be like, no, this is the person you need for the job.
It's gold. Mm-hmm. It's real good.
It was really well done.
Yeah. So I guess I'll mention in case you don't know or the audience doesn't know, Parker is like, her role on the team is kind of what you would think as a traditional thief, sort of like traditional cat burglar. She crawls in vents. She does gymnastics to like crawl through lasers, like steals artifacts, money, etc., etc. So yeah, that's like her literal, you know, her everybody has a title on the team. Her title is thief, just straight up. So technically they're all thieves in some way. Well, I would say only actually Parker, Hardison, and Sophie are thieves, but they all sort of identify as that. Yeah. But Parker's like actual role is thief. So Nate says that, and we cut to Parker, and she smiles and says, "There's a first time for everything." And she gets like a real good like evil smile.
Yeah, she's excited for this.
Yeah,
she's ready for the challenge.
Yeah. This is where she starts going through the specs. Bank was built prior to 1980 before computers. That means it's got a larger than normal night deposit chute. So here's our fake ledger fact. Hardison chimes in because business owners had to drop off their ledgers with their deposits at the end of each day. And she kind of looks at him and is like, "Oh, you knew that?" And he's like, "Yeah, you thought my knowledge was only limited to ones and zeros?" It's really cute. And Parker says she thinks the chute is her way in, but it's in the alley and there's cops everywhere. And Hardison says he can take care of that, but we have bigger problems. Elliot says, "What's that?" Sheriff Coltrane over here called the FBI, the real FBI. And Nate looks like wildly out the window for a second. It's really funny. And Hardison says the closest office is San Diego, so they have 45 minutes. Nate says, "We can't worry about that now." Hardison says, "When do we worry about it?" Nate goes, "In about 45 minutes.
Which, you know, good point. Good point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we got a con going on. Like, there's a lot. Yeah, so Michael asks Nate what's going on. Nate lets him listen to Hardison bitch and moan for a second, and Michael kind of like half laughs. Suddenly, Derek pushes Sophie back to the group and says, "No more talking, no more convincing us you can help. We're in charge." He orders everybody against the desks. Michael joins in with him, but while everyone is moving, Nate and Derek exchange kind of nods, so they've agreed to let the team help them. And while everyone's kind of moving by the desks, including the judge, Derek kicks the briefcase with the money further away from the group while he's preoccupied. So, yeah, now we're officially running a job within a job, which is super fun.
I love it.
This doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, you're like, fuck yeah.
I love a little Russian nesting doll.
Yes, exactly. Chaos. Yeah, Leverage specializes in that kind of shit. Yeah, so we're helping the bank robbers get their mom/wife back, and we're still conning the judge also. Chef's kiss. I'm calling this scene the 2-second ransom call. All right, you ready? Okay. Outside, Hardison is chatting with the sheriff and gets a call, or a pretend call. He says, yes, like he's talking on the phone. He says, "Yes, we'll do whatever you need us to do. Just don't hurt anybody." He listens for literally 2 or 3 seconds.
Not that long. And
hangs up. And then he's like, boys, gather around, listen up, boys. That was the call we were waiting for." And then he like starts listing off the ransom demands. He's like, "First of all, they want 12 large pizzas." And he like just goes off with this like list of ridiculous
meat lovers.
Yeah. First of all, he's like describing the pizzas, and then he's like, yeah, I don't know. He says like half calf, tall, triple shot latte,
just, like, rattling stuff off.
And his one of his demands includes an Etch-a-Sketch because somebody in there likes to squiggle. I'm pretty sure, I don't know how much of this was ad-libbed by Aldous Hodge.
I would like to believe.
I think it's a large majority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to believe that.
Yeah, so this is his distraction, so Parker can sneak off to get into the net deposit chute.
Also makes a nice Hall & Oates reference.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, here he keeps going. 3 copies of the latest Hall & Oates CD, steaks and a grill. They're trying to tailgate. They need your overalls. I don't know why. I'm not doing a super great job of repeating, but when you hear him rattle these off, you're just like, yeah, correct. Okay. And all the cops around him are just like taking notes. It's good. All right. Back in the bank.
No.
What do you got?
I hope I'm not skipping ahead of you. Cause yeah, he like basically sends like Parker sneaks in.
Yeah.
So she sneaks in through the thing. So he's ready to let the police go. So he like releases them to go get the demands. And then he stops the one guy. He goes, "No, not you.
Yeah, not you. We got to talk about Hall & Oates.
Talk about Hall & Oates."
Yeah. It's and then it cuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, this man is after my heart.
Yeah. It's
Doctor
amazing.
Who, Hall & Oates, torrenting.
Yeah. And I think in the commentary, Amy Berg said the Hall & Oates reference was like a nod to her parents or something. Her parents love Hall & Oates. So that was cute. Yeah, okay. So now we are coming up on the scene with the tagline.
Oh.
Do you think you got it?
Yep.
Okay, all right, here we go. So back in the bank, Michael said, we need to trust them. Derek says, they're criminals. But then he looks out the window and sees the cop cars, and he's like, but then again. And one of them grabs the case from the floor. And the judge asks Nate what he said to the kid. Now they're like on the floor again by the desks. Nate says, oh, divide and conquer. He's doing his accent again. Try to get them to turn on each other. And it was starting to work, but, we cut to Derek from the point of view of the chute from inside the bank. So he has the briefcase with the money now. And we hear, hey, and we cut to the chute with Parker just like hanging out in it, like looking bored. Just
chilling.
She looks bored. She's like, this is a Tuesday. Derek just kind of like looks at her and wordlessly passes her the case, and she starts to like wriggle backwards out of the chute. But then he says, there's a lot of money in there. And Parker looks back at him and says, yeah, I know. And he says, my wife's life depends on that money getting where it needs to go. And he's like visibly distressed. And Parker gets a little more subdued for a second and like a little more not bored and says she understands. And then she says,
sometimes bad guys are the only good guys you get.
Yeah, baby, there's your tagline. So you got it. Yeah. It's real good. It just has a rhythm to it. Mm-hmm. Almost. Sometimes bad guys are the only good guys you get. All right, then back to the bank. The kid is pointing his pistol at the group. The judge gets up again and says, look, kid, you're obviously in trouble. Why don't you let me help you out? Nate says, look, judge, I think they were serious when they said no talking. Let's just sit here and do what they say. But the judge moves towards the kid, and he's like holding a handkerchief for some reason.
Yeah.
Did you get this?
He's holding a white handkerchief, which I think is supposed to be him like,
surrender.
I'm surrendering.
I'm but a damsel in distress. Yeah.
I've got a hanky.
Okay, I truly was like a little baffled by that.
Yeah, it was weird.
I thought it was a little out of place, but whatever. Moves towards the kid. Kid's still pointing the gun. Judge asshole starts to try to negotiate to give them his money on loan, of course. So the judge is trying to give the robbers his money in the briefcase, which he thinks is still in the bank, in order to get these guys out of here. He tries to move around the kid, but Michael cocks the gun. He's like, where are you going? The judge says he's just trying to show him his word is good. How much do you need? Because I've got quite a... But the briefcase is gone. What the hell? Where's my briefcase, he says, as it turns back to the kid. Michael's phone starts ringing. Nate sighs and gets up. He's like, okay, here we go. Michael looks at Nate and says, it's them. What do I do? And the judge goes for Michael's gun. They struggle. The gun goes off and hits...
Cowboy
Nate.
Jones.
Cowboy Jones.
Cowboy Jones is shot.
Hits Nate, our leader, our fearless leader, in the shoulder. He falls back. And here's the wild part, y'all. Sophie breaks character, yelling his real name. This is unheard of for Sophie. Sophie does not break, like, ever.
Except when her man gets shot.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote, like, here's another, it's another Fade to Black commercial, by the way. So I wrote like, this is our second twist of the episode, and yeah, it's pretty wild that Sophie breaks here, but if anything were to do it, Nate getting shot right in front of her would be it. But this is not the first or last time Nate will be shot either in this show.
Good to know. Good to know.
And actually the first time they shot each other in a flashback from the pilot, which we're going to reference at the end of the episode. So,
all right.
Yeah, shit gets real. Outside, the cops are freaking out because they heard the gunshot. Hardison tells the sheriff to hold on. Like, we go in there guns blazing. There will be more shots and people will get hurt. We need to know what happened. But he's kind of talking on comms, like, what happened? We hear Sophie over comms say, please, everybody just calm down. Then we're back in the bank. And just put the guns down, she says. We can talk this thing through. She has Nate in her arms on the floor, and he's, like, bleeding from his shoulder. And the judge says, I'm not taking orders from you. He still has Michael, like, at gunpoint.
So the judge is holding Michael hostage.
Yeah, now the judge.
Michael's dad is pointing the gun at both of them.
Right. And she says, what's your problem? He says, you're my problem. You and Nate there. I heard what you called him, which is funny because when we met, he told me his name was Carl. And Nate, like, kind of looks up at Sophie while he's saying this. And the judge says, you're trying to rip me off and you're in on it with these two, Michael and Derek. So he's half right at this point, which is hilarious.
He's starting to figure some of it out.
He's on the right track, sort of, but he goes, like, he takes it in a... my metaphors aren't
How
good
would
here.
you figure out that these two completely chaotic events
right,
are actually unrelated.
Right. Yeah.
And just happen to be at the same time.
Yeah.
I would assume they go together.
Yeah.
If I was in the judge's position.
Yeah. But he's wrong. Derek says, we have nothing to do with them. But the judge says, no, I see what's going on. The four of you are conspiring against me. This bank robbery isn't even real. It's just a conspiracy to get my money. It's actually not a bad plan. You knew if Carl here just walked away with the money, eventually I'd track him down. And he's like fully ranting at this point. Mm-hmm. And like I said, still has Michael at gunpoint. So Derek says, you're wrong. They were just trying to help us. We need the money for my wife for ransom. The judge isn't convinced. And he says, you'd have to be an idiot to fall for a cockamamie story like that.
Also, I know we're getting here. I know this is where this is going. Mm-hmm. But even at this point, as the judge is ranting and he's holding the kid hostage, I was like, okay, so he's the bank robber. He's the captain.
Yeah, now. As soon as like he takes Michael hostage, you just go, oh, okay, we're doing this. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the judge isn't convinced. He's like telling everybody to shut up, like hand over that, he says to Derek, hand over that gun before I get it in my head to shoot all four of you. Derek glances at Sophie for permission, which is funny, and she nods, and he puts the shotgun down. And would you look at that? Suddenly the judge is the one taking hostages.
He's the captain now.
Mm-hmm. He shoves Michael and Derek over with the rest of everybody else. So they're all on the floor now. Now, Sophie says, now please, and a little dangerously, I might add, he needs to get to a hospital, referring to Nate.
Oh, shit.
She's pissed.
Sorry.
Yeah, what?
I am so sorry.
What?
I just realized this is so similar to an episode of Psych.
Is it?
Yes. Where they take someone hostage and force another guy to rob the bank. And it's Gus walks into a bank.
That's the episode?
Yes, that's the episode title. Because Gus is in the bank and Sean is outside the bank.
Do you know what year that episode was?
Oh.
Because now I'm like, who came first?
Gus walks.
Because I know the writers knew each other.
Season 3. 2008?
Oh my God, it's the same year.
No, the show started in 2008, so it would have come out 2011.
Psych?
This episode, Gus walks into a bank. No, it says September 12th, 2008.
And this aired in December of 2008. So they were probably writing these at the same time.
Oh, that is so funny.
That's hilarious.
That's amazing.
I love it. They did also joke in the commentary for this episode. They said something about like, a show has jumped the shark when they do a hostage episode. And they're like, so we're just going to get ours out of the way early.
All right, season 1, jumping the shark. Bold choice.
So that was a joke. But anyway, so yeah, Sophie's like trying to get the judge to let Nate go. And the judge is like, that ain't going to happen until I get my money. Where is my damn briefcase? So yeah, big raising the tension. Mm-hmm. Yeah, raising the stakes. As if they weren't high enough, honestly. Like, we have a con and a con. Now Nate's shot. Sophie broke cover.
But that's what good writing does. You raise the stakes, you raise the stakes, you raise the stakes until the last possible second.
Yeah, and another thing the writers talk about for this show is like, how do you raise the stakes on characters who are supposed to be at the top of their game, who are supposed to be the best at what they do? So they talk a lot about like, we have to put them in certain circumstances that they aren't prepared for,
right? Because
we need them to be challenged. Because if they, if they're supposed to be the best of the best, so like technically they should just do stuff and
be able,
go off without a hitch. Yeah. But you got to throw in a bunch of wrenches.
But that's why we like the heist stuff because like it's the best laid plans.
Yeah,
you're still gonna have hiccups, and what you enjoy seeing, at least what I enjoy seeing in heist, is how characters react and respond to the hiccups. Yep. I mean, especially like Oceans.
Yeah.
So many of the hiccups were part of the plan.
Right. And they do that a lot here too. Yeah. They do that a lot here too.
Just trying to parse out what did they have planned and what did they just go with.
Right. Yeah. And what did they riff? So now we cut to Elliot.
Rock.
Yep. Cowboy Batman, who's waiting for the drop with the cartel. Back to Sophie, who says it's not here. To the judge, meaning the briefcase. It's not even in the building. Back to Elliot. He's like, come on. He's like waiting for the guys to show up. We hear Hardison over comms. They haven't arrived yet. Elliot says, yeah, because meth heads are so punctual. And that's one of the other great lines.
You've got a point.
It's funny. Again, drama and comedy. Balancing it out all the time.
Dramedy.
Yeah. Back to the bank. The judge says, you don't come to my town and think you can steal my money. The other hostages try to get him to let Nate go. He says, again, nobody leaves. He yells, shut up, everybody. He has to think.
And this is where I'm like, yes, the judge is going down for this shit.
Yeah. He says, if you got the briefcase out of the bank, you must have a man on the outside. How are you communicating? We cut to Parker back on the outside with the cops. She's telling a story about how she base jumped off a building onto the roof of an armored truck and took out a guard. And the cop that she's telling the story to is like, you mean the gunman? And she's like, yeah, that's what I said. Hardison comes over and says no one was hurt in the bank, but one of the hostages was grazed, and he like looks right at Parker as he says this. They're going to release him as soon as their demands are met. Where the hell are those pizzas? Hardison and Parker go over to look at the security footage of the bank where they see Sophie holding Nate on the floor. Parker says, oh, this is bad. Inside the bank, the judge goes up to Nate and takes out his earbud. He holds it up for the camera and says, you guys get your money when I get my money. The kids are pretty grim. The judge stomps on the earbud and they all get like a jolt of like feedback. Parker says, this is really bad. Music is definitely ominous here. Inside the bank, the judge nods at Sophie. She slowly takes out her earbud and is like staring at him the whole time with like, if looks could kill. Slowly takes out her earbud, hands it to him and says, now back off. He stomps on her earbud too. So the kids are officially cut off from mom and dad. So Elliot hears the second earbud gets crushed and he's like, is that what I think it was? Hardison says, yeah. Nate looks pretty messed up, man. We're going to need that briefcase back.
Yeah. So, what I wrote down at this point, too, is like, okay, here's the deal.
Yeah.
Right? We know we need to get the briefcase to the meth heads so we can get the wife.
1.
We got to get the wife.
2.
We got to get the briefcase back.
Yeah.
We got to bring the briefcase back to the bank.
Yeah.
With the money.
Yeah.
And then we got to get Cowboy Jones out of the bank so he can get medical attention.
Yeah.
And
3.
we got to take down the judge.
4.
Yeah.
So there's like 4 major things we need to accomplish.
There are so many things.
Yeah, at least 4.
And we don't have much time left in
the
episode runtime.
No. This is going to be snappy. Okay, we're going to need that briefcase back. And of course, now the meth heads show up. So Elliot is far away from the briefcase because he was like watching with binoculars. He says he's working on it, which means we're about to get a good Elliot beatdown. In the bank, Sophie helps Nate sit up. This is a really great conversation they have. She says, I think it went through and through. It missed your artery. He's like, well, at least there's that. They kind of look at each other. And she's like, things could be worse. And Nate says, worse than me getting shot and you blowing our cover. And she's immediately like, no. You don't get to lay that crap on me. We wouldn't even be in this mess if you had just walked out with the cash when you had the chance. I would have been fine. I know. She says, I can take care of myself. I've been doing it for a long time, since way before I met you. He just keeps saying, I know, like as she's saying
she's
all this
going on about how she's independent. She knows what the hell she's doing.
Yeah.
She doesn't need him.
And like, she's freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like this is stress motivated. So I think that's part of the reason why he's just kind of monotone, responding the way he is. But also he does know, like, this is fully a choice he's made for himself. And of course the implication is he knows, and yet he still couldn't leave her behind. So she says, fine, what's the plan now? And he's like, the plan, the one where I got a 1/2-inch hole carved out of my shoulder.
It's like, what's the plan? She asked the man who's bleeding out onto the floor.
It's like, yeah, I threw out that plan a long time ago. It doesn't matter now anyway. We lost communication, Sophie says. Hardison, Parker, and Elliot, they're on their own. Yep, Nate says, fade to black. Cut to commercial. And it's just a great little back and forth. And once again, it tells you just a lot about their dynamic and where they're at.
The whole ensemble of this team that can both be very collaborative, or function very independently, very competently.
Yeah. And they can fight with each other too. Like, that doesn't happen. They're all very much like on point in this episode. But it gets even more crazy when they like disagree with each other and start kind of fighting each other. Okay, now we're back from commercial. And Elliot's gonna kick some ass. Let's go!
He's got some meth head ass to kick.
Yes! So we open on the meth heads counting the cash from the briefcase. And there's more than they asked for. And one of them says, well, ain't that punk full of surprises? Meaning Michael. And out of the backseat of their SUV, the mom tries to escape. Meth Head 1 says, where the hell do you think you're going? And like goes to hit her. And out of nowhere, Cowboy Batman that he is, Elliot catches his arm, grabs the gun from his hand and says, hey, what smells like crank? And screams like a little girl. And then crushes this guy's kneecap, causing him to, in fact, scream like a little girl. And he says, that's the right answer. And then he shoves the guy away, disarms the gun. Elliot doesn't like guns. So that's one of his...
Okay, he is Batman.
He is Batman. Yeah. So he immediately disarms the gun, throws away the bullet, and then he chucks the gun at the guy in the front seat of the car.
Start watching it.
So you gotta watch this a couple times through because it's truly great fight choreo. And then basically he proceeds to unleash on these guys, totally badass Elliot style. And he keeps, like, the best part of this fight is there's a guy in the front seat of the SUV, right? Mm-hmm. And he keeps kicking the front door. Like, the guy keeps trying to get out, and he keeps kicking the front door closed. And at one point, he's like, stay in the car. And he's, like, beating up all these guys. So, yeah, he knocks everybody out, whatever. And then he goes to untie the mom. And she's like, who are you? And he says, well, man, we'd be the cavalry. And it's the best. It's so good. Yeah, it's a great line. And yeah, it's a tidy little fight scene. You leave wanting more, basically.
That's well done.
Yeah, it's really well done. And Christian Kane...
Like you said, good fight choreography.
Yeah, just really good. And yeah, Christian Kane does most, if not all, of his own fight choreo.
Nice.
Yeah, and he's super into it. And you could tell. He makes believable. And it's fast. I think that's one of the most impressive things to me with fight choreo is if it looks fast without doing the fast cutting thing. And they do, I mean, they cut in this scene, but it's not like the crazy Bourne style,
right? You know? Where we're gonna cut on every single punch,
right?
Speaking of, we should watch Atomic Blonde together because there's some great fight choreography in that.
And you know, shockingly, I haven't seen it. Oh, and I really want to. I love Charlize Theron.
It's so good. We'll watch it.
Wait, no, have I seen it? No, I don't think.
James McAvoy.
Is he the bad guy?
Kind of.
Okay. I don't remember.
Oh my goodness. We should watch it.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Dodd Rock kicks ass.
He does. He does indeed. Okay. Now we're in the end game. So back with the cops, Hardison is typing away at his computer and Parker asks him if he's ready yet. He says, not yet, almost. She says, hurry up, the pizza's here. We pan to a cop who's carrying like 12 pizza boxes. And you know, you're immediately like, oh, what's their plan? In the bank, Sophie says to the judge, just let the paramedics take him. The rest of us will stay. So she's still trying to argue for Nate to get released. The judge replies, what? And this is so good. The judge replies, what? And give up my leverage? And Nate and Sophie like exchange glances. I died. It's so good.
They said the name of the show.
Well, and it is also technically the name of their like front company LLC.
Really?
Yeah. Hardison sets up like an actual like business front for them. I think in episode 2 of the show. Nice. So it is actually called Leverage Incorporated or something.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I like it.
So Derek and Michael are sitting next to Nate and Sophie.
Yeah.
Nate,
quick note. What a dad. Being like, my shithead son got my wife killed. Could get her murdered, and now I have to go rob a bank with him. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
What a dad.
Yep. So Nate says, hey, listen, to Derek mostly. She's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. Derek asks him, your people, are they good? Nate smiles and says, yeah, they're the best. And he's so proud. He's so proud of his little found family thief team. It's cute. Hardison knocks on the front door of the bank. He says, it's Agent Leonard of the FBI. We have those pizzas you ordered. The judge says they didn't order any, but Nate says, you're going to want to answer that, Judge. And he does the money sign with his hand. Either Nate knows what the kids have planned or he's playing along. I think he's playing along at this point.
He's playing along, yeah. He's just having to put his blind trust into his team.
Yeah, which is hard for him, for sure. Also, he's probably just in a lot of pain and half conscious at this point. We don't know how much blood he's lost. You can see there's some blood on his jacket and stuff, but it's very unclear. They leave that very ambiguous. But yeah, either Nate knows or he's playing along. He kind of smiles at Sophie as Hardison's coming in, and he's excited to see what their game is. Hardison walks in with a paramedic behind him and wheeling the pizzas in on a stretcher. Hardison grabs the top box and goes to Roy, and he says, I was told you were expecting this. He opens the lid to show a box full of cash. The judge laughs evilly. It's the evil laugh of the villain. Hardison keeps the judge looking at him away from where the pizzas are being unloaded by the hostages. Is there anything else we can get you? He asks. Anything that would help this end peacefully. The judge tries to say, no way, I'm not. But Hardison says, sir, we brought what you asked for. If you'll just let the hostages go, you and me, we can talk this thing out. And the judge says, no, it was those 4. And Hardison goes, look, bro. Look here, bro. Okay, I understand. And he's like kneeling down and he puts his hands behind his head.
Oh, it's so good.
But no one else needs to get hurt. And the judge is like, what are you doing? And he's like pointing his gun at him still. And he's like, you're one of them, aren't you? And then Hardison says, now. The cops come in. The sheriff says, put the gun down, Your Honor. The judge tries to defend himself. And he's like, look, Bill, this isn't what it looks like. They start to arrest him over his protests. They get Nate on the stretcher and the cops go to help the hostages. The sheriff says, Roy, if you needed money, you could have come to me for a loan. The judge says, no, I got plenty of money. Where's the pizza box? He's like freaking out. Hardison is like, do you understand what anything this man is saying? Because this judge is like, no, they've got my money. Again, it was in my briefcase. And the sheriff says, this briefcase? And pulls the briefcase out from under the desk. How did it get there? We don't know. Don't stop the fun train. He opens it.
Don't question things too much.
Don't question it. He opens it. It's full of crystal meth baggies.
I thought they were mints at first. I was like, oh, little dinner mints. It's so sweet of them to leave something for the judge. Oh, it's meth.
It's drugs. The sheriff is like, my God, what have you gotten yourself into, Roy? Hardison piles on. This makes sense. It would explain the irrational behavior, the nervousness, the irritability, paranoid delusions, violent outbursts. The judge is like, no, he's in on it with these 2 and these 2 over there. And he like goes up to Derek and Michael only to pull baseball caps off their heads. And it's Elliot and Parker. Elliot winks at him and they both walk away. They wheel Nate out of the bank onto an ambulance. 2 paramedics go to close the doors, and surprise, it's Derek and Michael.
It's the bank robbers.
Yep. We flash back to Elliot and Parker dressed as paramedics going to switch clothes with Derek and Michael, the bank robbers, the original bank robbers. In the ambulance, then we cut back to the ambulance. The mom is driving. And the family is like reunited. And Nate says that's all very heartwarming, but can they save it for after the morphine drip?
There was also a Dog Day Afternoon reference in here somewhere.
Yeah,
too.
It's coming. It's coming.
Oh, okay. You're getting to it.
I'll get to it. Yeah. So back in the bank, the remaining crew are all giving statements to the cops condemning the judge. Elliot compares it to Dog Day Afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's your Western reference. He's like, have you ever seen Dog Day Afternoon?
Such a good movie.
Even Frank or Fred. Now I got him mixed. Now I got him mixed up.
Doesn't matter.
The manager chimes in and says it happened exactly how they said.
Which it's the judge's prophecy of whatever I say the truth is the truth coming to fruition.
The villain always gets got by their own hubris.
Yes.
Yep, that's the rule.
I loved the little symmetry.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Chef kiss.
And this is a particularly long gloat, I would say. Like, this is almost 5 minutes of gloating over the that's pretty long for even for this show. Yeah, so the judge says they're all lying. Just look at the tapes. Hardison says, good idea. Flashback to Hardison doctoring the footage to show the judge taking Nate hostage and shooting him. Pretty damning stuff, the sheriff says. They got you on the TV and everything.
Yeah. And this is my one insertion. I'm like, that computer hackery.
Yeah.
No.
It's totally
I will
BS.
allow it.
Yeah.
I will, what is it? Suspend my disbelief.
Don't stop the fun train.
For the fun train.
Yeah.
But yeah, that computer hackery would never happen.
No. It was total BS. But it was good graphics.
It was great.
Yeah. But yeah, how the sheriff says they got you on the TV. And the commentary, they talk about Americans being hardwired to believe things on TV.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and the judge is like, come on, Bill, you know me. And the sheriff is like, yeah, I do, Roy. That's kind of the problem. Everybody knows he's a dick. Oof. Yeah, so they haul him out.
Ass hat going to jail.
Ass hat's going to jail. Sophie comes over to Hardison and smiles at the faked footage. And she says, you're still a geek. And he says, geek power, baby, stay strong. And that's all Aldisage. That's also riffing off one of his like catchphrases, which is age of the geek. Okay, Hardison Parker outside, still dressed as FBI agents, leave the scene as the real FBI team rolls in. Like, literally, they roll out, the real guys roll in. It's nice.
The exact same spot.
Yeah.
With the exact same car.
Yeah, and then you kind of remember, in the back of your head, you remember, like, the 45 minutes timing. And it's our friends, Agents Taggart and McSweeten, who you don't know yet, but they have been introduced in the show prior to this, if you're watching in
this
the correct
would explain
order.
Why they go along so quickly with we solved the problem.
Yeah, so you're supposed to know them already. So they get out to open the back doors of a van where the meth heads are tied up, and they're like, look at that, damn, we're good.
Gift wrapped.
Yeah. which, it was all Elliot. So Elliot. Oh, yep.
Although it's kind of like a Spider-Man move, because Spider-Man has done that.
Yeah.
Where he's left the bad guys.
Does Batman not do that?
I just feel like Batman.
He just beats guys up.
Yeah, he just beats them up.
Elliot did that too, though.
Yeah, but I don't know if Batman gift wraps them. Okay. It's not in the way that Spider-Man does, Okay.
Well, we can just agree that Elliot's some kind of superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're glad he's on our side. Okay. And yeah, then we ride off into the sunset. So the last scene, the team is back together in the stolen ambulance. Presumably they've dropped off the family somewhere. Elliot is patching Nate up. Nate's still like on the stretcher in the middle of the ambulance. Sophie and Parker are sitting on his other side. Sophie tells Parker she did a great job. And Parker says, yeah, I think I can act okay when I'm yelling at people and bossing them around. So like I was saying, this is the beginning of her journey of like learning how to grift, learning how to...
She's mentoring her.
Yeah, oh, exactly, yeah.
Women uplifting women. We love to see it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Sophie's basically mentoring all of them besides Nate on how to grift better. Elliot's definitely the strongest, but they're all learning. And
it's so cool to see these characters so well defined.
Yeah.
And it's only episode 5.
Yes.
Great.
It's amazing. Yeah. So Nate says we have to make sure we get the cash to the Delgado family and starts yelping as Elliot digs in his shoulder. Elliot tells him to settle down. You act like you've never been shot before. And they both look over at Sophie.
So that's the
smiles
reference.
A little bit. Yeah.
I missed that.
Which actually... Yeah, so like I said, this is a reference to the pilot where we find out in a flashback that Nate and Sophie once shot each other back in the 90s when they were chasing each other across Europe. I'm also kind of obsessed with the idea that Elliot knows this story for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think this is public knowledge about, like, as far as the rest of the team, but for some reason, Elliot knows. And I'm like, which one of them told him and why? Like, I need to know, like...
I would like to imagine that Dodrock and Cowboy Jones were just having drinks one night.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the backstory came out.
Yeah, I would believe it. So Nate says to Hardison, who's driving the bus, so, pizza boxes, huh? And Hardison says, yeah, I know, you could have done better. But Nate says, no, I couldn't have.
He's so proud of them.
He's so proud of them. It's a really nice moment. So yeah, basically so mom and dad are proud of the kids and they drive off into the sunset.
It's like the kids had to fly solo for a little bit.
Yeah.
They did it.
Yeah, they did it.
They flew the plane.
They did it. They did it all by themselves. And that's the bank shot job.
I love it.
Woo!
I love it.
Yeah. It's just such a great episode. It really has it all, basically. Yeah, I mean, the con within the con.
Yep.
A super satisfying villain to take down, which basically every level.
Yeah. An asshat who you immediately hate.
Immediately
you want
hate.
Him to be taken down.
And like you're right in the thick of it right away. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to figure out what's going on. You have a lot of Nate and Sophie stuff and a lot of the kids stuff. Elliot's kind of separated for most of the episode, but he gets a really good beat down. Mm-hmm. Parker and Hardison doing the FBI thing is hilarious.
Yeah, that was
lots of great jokes. Time. Some fun, like, heisty stuff. Also some con stuff. It just has it all.
Yeah, and there's not really a scene or a line that's wasted.
No.
It all goes to the service of this wonderful, chaotic heist that's going on.
It's extremely economical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just bam, bam, bam.
And a great set with great color balance.
Yep.
Lighting.
Atmosphere.
It's
heat.
So much heat.
It's so hot.
It's great.
Yeah, it's just a super fun time. So did you like it?
I did. I mean, like we've talked about and referenced, you showed me the pilot before, and I did very much enjoy it back then too.
Yeah.
So no, this is definitely a show that's been on my list for a while because of you.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet. So.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those shows where you can pretty much pick up any like as long as you know the basic premise and you kind of know who the characters are, you can pretty much pick up any episode and have a good time. But also, if you watch it from start to finish, it's extremely satisfying, like full story. Yeah.
And it's only 5 seasons.
And it's only 5 seasons.
I love.
77 episodes.
Plus, I feel like I've seen a lot of the show in a way.
Oh, yeah?
Through Snapchat.
That would be my fault.
I think it was like a year ago when you were rewatching this.
Yeah.
And you snapped me every single time you'd watch it, but like you'd snap me 5-minute chunks of the show at a time.
Okay, not 5 minutes. Snapchat doesn't let you do 5 minutes.
Whatever the maximum.
But I'd be like, I have to tell you about this whole scene.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have, again, no context You see why we started a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Now. Like, literally, it just to avoid us from sending random voice notes and texts and Snapchats to each other about TV. Okay, I have a rating for this episode. Do you have a rating for this episode?
I can come up with one, yeah, because I forgot that.
Okay. I'm giving this episode 12 out of 12 pizzas and an Etch-a-Sketch for ransom demands. A++. Nice.
I am going to give this one 2 out of this town is big enough for the 2 of us. Sheriffs.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one.
And the 2 sheriffs would be Sophie and Cowboy Jones.
I like it a lot. I don't know if Sophie would appreciate being called a sheriff, but she could probably work with it. Yeah.
I mean, a Western sheriff, right? Who's her own form of the law.
She could do it. She plays like a sort of mob character at one point.
She could do it then.
It's nuts. Like, she turns on this character and you're suddenly really scared of her and you're like, oh my God.
Oh, I could see that.
You're suddenly like, has Sophie killed people? It's a really great episode. Anyway, shall we do a preview about what we're talking about next time?
Okay. So, we're watching an episode of my favorite show.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
Do you know what that show is?
I do.
Yeah, you do. What is it, Amanda?
It's Bob's Burgers.
It's Bob's Burgers. I freaking love Bob's Burgers. Before I go into that rant, we are going to be watching season 10, episode 20. Oops, I didn't do it again. One thing to know about Bob's Burgers is every single episode title is a pun, basically,
Dude,
or a reference to something.
I love an episode title convention.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, pay attention then to, you like puns, yes?
Yeah.
Pay attention to the opening credits.
Okay.
Because there is a pest control van that pulls up.
Okay.
And it's always a different pun on a different pest control company. And then the shop next to them is always changing every single week. And it's usually a pun as well.
That's great.
And then there's a burger flavor of the day, which sometimes you get multiple in an episode. And that's also a pun.
Can you imagine just sitting around and coming up
They have to just have an index system of
seriously
all the different puns they've ever thought
I'd be personally, I'd be scared to run out.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing they must have realized at some point we can just keep going forever.
Yeah, I mean there's 273 episodes so far and they have
and it's
not
still
run
going,
out of
right?
Puns. Yeah, it's still
Still going. They haven't run out of puns. That's insane.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Bob's Burgers is an animated show. Started airing in 2011, still airing today.
Still going strong. That's crazy.
It is, the IMDb summary is Bob Belcher runs a struggling burger shop with his wife and 3 children. So it stars H. John Benjamin as primarily Bob.
There's a name.
Dan Mitz as Tina. Eugene Merman as Jean. John Roberts as Linda and some other characters. And Kristen Shaw as Louise.
Wow. So almost all dudes playing women's voices.
Okay, so Bob's Burgers is interesting in this way. The main cast, yes, it's mostly dudes and then Kristen Shaw. However, they gender bend a lot as far as the voice actors.
Right.
So they do have some female, recurring women voice actors come on to voice men.
Cool.
And enough men who voice women, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, you want a certain tone for the character. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
That's one thing, you could criticize Bob's Burgers for doing this, for saying we're going to replace something that could have gone to a woman voice actor and use a man instead. And it's a valid criticism to make of the show. However, that's looking at the show as part of an industry trend, right? I think individually the way the show handles it, because they gender bend just all over the place, they have fun with it, right? They just find the best actor for that character.
I was going to say, I think when you hear their voices, you're like, okay, I get it.
It makes a lot of sense. Especially John Roberts as Linda. John Roberts was doing a YouTube series where he was imitating his Jersey mom.
No shit.
And that's how he got discovered.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's so funny the stuff that he
Does he still do it?
No.
Okay.
No. It's an old.
He's a paid actor now.
Yeah. And then Dan Mintz, who does Tina, they had originally written that character to be a 13-year-old boy. So they had casted him to play a 13-year-old boy. Tina's character, as a warning, is very sexual. She's 13 and she's discovering her sexuality. And so as a 13-year-old boy, they thought it was like a little
cringy,
chintzy, overdone.
Yeah.
Cringy. So they're like, well, if we make it a girl, it could be a lot funnier. And it is.
Yeah.
And you still have Dan Mintz doing the exact same voice he would have done for a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that in and of itself.
Yes. But yeah, this show's still running. It's near and dear to me. I started watching it back in season 2.
Nice.
My friends introduced me in college. And I'll be honest, I hated it at first.
Yeah.
I am not one who is usually into adult animation.
Yeah.
Although this is more family-friendly animation.
Right. Not like Family Guy or...
Yeah. And we'll definitely get into this more because I had a lot to say about Bob's Burgers.
Can't wait.
But yeah, it breaks the mold as far as what one should expect from adult animation about a family, about a nuclear family. It's not like Family Guy.
Oh my God, it's family themed again.
Oh yeah.
Both their episodes are about families. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, this is great. This is because a majority of what I'm going to be talking about next episode is the focus on the family.
And actually, it's a family with 2 parents and 3 kids. Oh my God.
This is brilliant.
Wow, we didn't plan this at all, you guys.
I have no idea. Wow, no wonder why we're friends.
Or we're just same brain.
I'm obviously could keep talking.
Yeah.
But I will save that.
Well, okay, is there anything about this episode you want me to know that I should look out for besides the puns?
Look out for the puns because they're always fun.
Yeah.
There is going to be some stuff that seems a little wild. Go with it.
Okay. Go with it. I can go with it. I'm good at going with it.
Go with it. They have pickle costumes. Just go with it.
Okay.
And I'm picking this episode not because it's the best episode. I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think there are other episodes that are better. I am picking this episode because it is one that is just very dear to me. We're going to be learning about me next week.
I'm here for it.
We're going to be doing some toilet humor and we're going to be learning about me. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I resonate with this episode.
Okay. I will say I have seen Bob's Burgers before. I've caught some random episodes here and there. I also, like, the first time I watched it, the first time I came across it was also like, that's a hard pass for me.
Yeah. But I did not like it at first, I'll be honest.
Yeah. But then I did, get into it for a little while, like watch some episodes. It's one of those things where, like, if I was flipping channels, not that I really flip channels anymore because I don't have cable.
Is that really a thing people do?
Yeah, like my mom has YouTube TV, you can still flip channels. It would be like one of those shows where, like, I might, watch it if it was on TV type of thing. Yeah, so I think it's fun. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to watch and hear whatever stories you got about this episode. I'm intrigued now.
I am so excited.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to go off.
All right. Well, stay tuned for that one, y'all. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you stuck around. Thanks for hanging out, watching Leverage. And for all you Leverage fans out there, fear not, we will be doing more Leverage episodes in the future.
I'm looking forward to it personally.
Yeah, we're definitely doing the pilot at some point. That'll be a rewatch for both of us.
Hey, and then we get to shout out Chicago.
Yeah, we get to shout out Chicago.
And Vancouver.
And yeah, I mean, I have so many other episodes on my list from this show that I could talk about. So fear not, we will be returning to Leverage in the future. But for now, stick around and stay tuned for Bob's Burgers next week.
Poops, I didn't do it again.
Poops, I did. It is a really good episode title. I mean, do you sing it in your head? Like, I hear the song.
Yes.
Poops, I didn't do it again. All right. See you next time, y'all.
All right, laters.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Show Off. If you enjoyed this one, go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and give us your review of our episode pick for this week's pod. You can also email us at theshowoffpod@gmail.com. See you all next week.